science, baby.
What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Subscribe or die trying. What's poppin'? You know, hola, hola, oh. See, I don't think y'all know about that, right? So, as you see in the thumbnail, right? And I apologize for being a few minutes late. We get our moral compass from the crack era. This is why you see this, even our image comes from the crack era. How I'm dressed now, how I look now, how I look in most of my videos. I'm more of a, athletic gear, workout, or loungewear type of person, because when I'm at work, I got my stuff, and when I get home, this is how I chill out. But this is about to be a simple topic, wherein a lot of us don't want to talk about all of the vast majority of the things that we're upset about in Black America today come from the crack era. A lot of the sucker stuff that people feel like is okay come from the crack era. A lot of the bad parenting, a lot of the out-of-pocket children, a lot of the laws that keep people taking advantage of things like the family court system come from the crack era, because of how it quote unquote affected everybody. So a lot of the mother and father situation, comes from the crack era. You know what I'm saying? Why? So from the 80s to the 90s, maybe early 2000s, there was a lot going on. And a lot of you young people who might be in your 20s and 30s, you might have been a crack baby. Your children now, depending on what age you started having children, your moral compass came from, that era. And you might have been a crack baby who had a baby, and now you don't realize, everything you thought was cool, you taught your kid, and now your kid's stupid. Just flat out stupid. So, hey, Eric. First and foremost, I'm not gonna put this on Dwight, man, but I gotta say something. The crack era for Black America was probably the first time, you're right, that Black America got to dabble in all of the dysfunction and get paid for it that the rest of America got. So you gotta understand, white America dabbled in slavery and Jim Crow and internment camps and the mafia being part of white America, and the Irish and the Jewish mafias and criminal organizations being part of white America. And then you got the Hispanic cartel part of it, and then you got the Asian Yakuza triad criminal element that was all, covered up. It looks good on it, right? But the crack era was our first time just being flat out criminals and getting paid for it. That didn't last too long, because they was like, wait a minute, these fools is, we can't have them make thinking it's okay to be illegal in America like the rest of us. So I understand that. I understand that. You know, and even us as black folks, you know, is a problem. Because we had that's when the pastors came together and wanted the laws changed. That's how Joe Biden had implemented those laws, and Bill Clinton passed them. And you got the mandatory minimums and the 3-strike law. And people play this, you know, all the brothers was locked up. All the brothers wasn't locked up. We just talking about the drug dealers who was locked up. You know what I'm saying? That's where all the good men are dead, you know, in jail. You know, the homosexual dating white women, all from the crack era, because part of the crack era was the AIDS epidemic, because that was part of the 80s, back into the Studio 54, you know, drugs era, you know. So, so now we gotta go about it in a different way. Because people was thinking, oh, it was from shooting up, or it was from really, even with the HIV thing, it was known as a gay man's disease, and then it went from that to people who were shooting up. Thus, you know, people stopped shooting up and started smoking crack, and then they started smoking crack and selling their body for money and having all kind of crazy sex, and then they was catching AIDS too. It was crazy, but now we got to deal with the remnants of it. And the remnants of it is this. A lot of the stuff that people think is real, you a real stand-up guy, you know, whatever. You're a real stand-up guy, this, that, and the third. Because you was a street dude. When the kids say, I looked up to the hustlers and the players and the pimps. So now that went from the 60s all the way to now. Because the hustlers and the players and the pimps thing not just came from black exploitation movies, but it came from brothers going to war in Vietnam. Because I don't think if y'all realize, the Vietnam War lasted for like 20 years. I want to say from like 1955 to 1975. I might be a little off, but it's like a 20-year period. But fast forward, the crack era was different. That was when they had the NBC Nightline, or was the ABC stories about Newark, New Jersey, and young ladies getting on welfare. And when they were teenagers, teenage pregnancy was booming, and you can have a baby, get on welfare, and have a place to stay, and it'll be you and your mama and your kid, and the young man will just be out there. And this was a thing that went on during the crack era. Thus, you could date the dope boy because grandmama was taking care of the kids. So a lot of the stuff that we thought was cool came from the remnants of that. Now, I'm going to use a bunch of different analogies as far as entertainment for people to understand where I'm going with this. So first and foremost, you saw how the music changed from the 80s to the 90s. Anita Baker, 80s, Lil Kim, 90s. Big shift, big shift. You know, Lauryn Hill was the last of the Mohicans. You see what I'm saying? Even R&B changed, you know. The Vandross, sorry, I hate when this happens. You know, this ring goes, people like to call, what's up, bro? Let me just holler at you now. You know, Luther Vandross, Marvin Gaye, you know, even Freddie Jackson, Michael Jackson, Prince, all 80s, 90s, Jodeci. You know, what's up, Dana? So now we playing this game. records as commercials on channels. And what happened was, my cousin would listen to my cousin would listen to Too Short, and every time the cuss words would come on, you know, the volume would be on in the car, because we couldn't listen to that kind of music in the house. So we'd be in the car listening to it, turn it down every time it cuss, turn it down every time it cuss. Yeah. What are you smoking? A big fat come from East Oakland. It must be some kind of misunderstanding. Or these are the tales, the freaky tale. You know, I met this girl, and all of that whole time, there was manners. Like, my cousin was in high school, I was in grade school, and dating started changing, because you could date a girl in the projects. But in New Orleans, the dating was changing, because I remember he got robbed with an Uzi in the projects, dating a girl. That was the first setup of his life. You know, because the girl was like, the dude she was messing with was in the streets. You know, the dude she was messing with was in the streets. And he liked her. Him and his friend went there, and he was new to, like, why I'm in the projects, walking around, I got my nice outfit out for the date, and what is this car doing? That's crazy. And then, give me all that. You know, give me that chain, give me them sneakers. You know, that's how people was getting, see, it wasn't Jordans people was getting robbed for back in the day. You was getting robbed for your British Nikes. You was getting robbed for your Adidas. You know, gunpoint. You know, you was getting robbed for your 501 jeans. You was getting robbed for your gold chains, your ropes, and your herringbones. In the 90s, it was herringbone. You was getting robbed for all of that. And all of that was cool business. It was all right. People robbing you with no mask on. Come get it in blood if you really liked it. And it began to change, because there were people in the streets prior to the crack era, but the family had rules prior to the crack era. If you want to be in the streets, you got to get out of my house. You know, you can't sell drugs or rob homes or boost cars or, you know, boost items and live here. You got to take that out on the streets. Crack era, oh, somebody making money? You can stay in these projects with me. Just, you know, kick me off a little something. So now the kids is watching that. Like, if anybody ever saw the Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, he remembers when he was a kid, somebody selling drugs to his mom, and he gave him that look like, mother, when I get big, I'm gonna beat you. But then he became an adult, and he was dealing drugs, and he saw a kid look at him the exact same way. The exact same way. It's like, oh man. Because the money changed people. The allure changed people. You know. So that's where it is. What's up, Yogi? Thanks, fam. So now you got that element of it. The church element went out the window. You get what I'm saying? The church element has gone, it started slowly going out the window, because we went from being taken to church on Sundays, it was mandatory, to you could skip. You know what I'm saying? You could skip, you know, hey man. And even back in the day, the dope boys used to take they mothers or grandmothers to church, because they kept up the veneer of we have some type of moral standing. Even though it was just a veneer, it wasn't true. You know what I'm saying? But people started getting a little upset because the pastors wasn't feeling that. The pastors wasn't feeling drug addicts in the 80s and 90s, and the pastors wasn't feeling drug killers. Now, I'm gonna get to where it changed with them. Because what wound up happening over time was they started paying off pastors and drug dealers. Pastors, drug dealers started paying off pastors. Because pastors had shoddy background. You know, some pastors had that, oh, he was a pimp player, now he's a pastor, he was an ex-criminal, he turned his life around. So let me see if I could go to pastor and see if he could, let's see what he really about. And you had a lot of pastors, go down that road. So now, the vast majority of the community, there's a big percentage of the community that's compromised. See, now you got pastor compromised. You got the parents and grandparents compromised to a degree. Grandparents not so much, but the parents compromised. Then you got the police compromised. I'm the lead singer now. I gave you your 2 weeks. You better remember that, George. I hope you're doing well, bro. Salute to you, man. So you got, a bunch of people compromised. And since people are compromised now, whole dynamic changed. See, a lot of y'all don't want to say, okay, my dad wasn't in my life. This is where I start using the shows. Like if anybody watched BMF, dad was working in the plant. Dad didn't want that in his house, in his life. He didn't care that he was struggling. You know what I'm saying? Dad didn't care. We're going to struggle. We're going to have an honest living. But there were some guys who those dads got dumped on. Like, y'all remember, if you ever remember the show Rock was a garbage man. And then the drug dealers moved in. Clifton Powell played that character. He was letting them know, listen, man, you need to get off my, stop following us and watching us, because, while you watching us, we watching you, and we'll pay you to mind your business. Or your family might come up missing. That was the episode when Rock grabbed Clifton Powell by the neck and he was like, I'll break your back. Because that was the era, those were the men who were quote unquote men's men, and who they'll still put their hands on you. They still put their hands on you. Some of y'all, think about Jason's lyric. That was the crack era, but they was always talking about Mad Dog, which was Forrest Whitaker's character. Let me slow down. And then I forgot Bokeem Woodbine's character, but his name. But Dad came from the war. He was messed up. And Jason was just being in the street. Jason was trying to work and not deal drugs. And you saw two brothers going two completely different paths. One was a criminal, and one was just a guy working in a TV shop. Changed the morals. And the things we gravitated to in that era changed how we viewed life. Big menace to society. Let's start with Boys in the Hood, because that's where it really kicked off. Nobody could understand why Ricky got killed. Who would watch Boys in the Hood back then? Like, you mean to tell me a dude just bumped into him at a party, and then it became, I'm gonna shoot him? No, real talk, dude was just a hater. He knew Ricky was about to get out the hood, and that was the best opportunity he could make to kill him. Ricky wasn't in the streets. Ricky was on a football field. You know what I'm saying? What up, Mom? So that became okay. That became when, if you in the streets or out of the streets, you fair game. Because as long as I'm in the streets, I got a license to, if I'm hating on you for any reason. I might feel like you're better than me, you might make it out, you got to go. Thus the get back. You know what I'm saying? The Ice Cube getting the guy back, and then Ice Cube getting killed after that also. Because for some odd reason, it was cool to be in the streets. And what I want people to realize about the street life back then, 80s, 90s, in particular, people look back at the era like it was getting money. And they don't realize by the 90s, the money started dwindling. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, John is live. The money started dwindling. You know, so you had guys in the 80s who were making money. That's where you get the stories, you know, of the guys in New York, the guys in Florida, the guys in Texas, the guys in California. Those are really guys from the guys in Chicago. That was really 80s, guys in the DMV. All that was really 80s going around. By the 90s, by the time they started changing the laws, started cracking out. I know BMF got it popping, but I think they started even in the 80s. So, yeah, Erica know what I'm talking about, you know. So that wound up being a problem, you know. So now we playing this game where people going, oh, okay, all right, it's real out in the streets. It really wasn't that real. It was just people were lazy. If y'all remember, what was the movie? Is that Lean on Me? With Morgan Freeman playing, you know, they used to call me Crazy Joe, now they call me Batman. When he was the school principal, remember they was messing up everything. You know, they wanted to be thuggish in the school, and he had to try to change the culture of the old school. Thanks, Darren, with the RICO law. So our compass started changing. So you had kids who, you know, might have been children or teenagers in the 80s looking up to people who were quote unquote ballers in the 80s who might have crept into the early 90s. And oh man, I want to be like them. But they forgot about something because we were kids. It wasn't on me, thank you. They forgot about something because we were kids. I'm gonna get to it, fam. You know. So now we playing this game. So now people are like, oh, okay. And then you get to the era where the money dried up, the violence ramped up. See, when it was less quote unquote ballers in the streets, you know, less of that. What would be that era that people were paid in full, like 80s? You know, it's like, yo, what's going on? You know, when that slowed down, then people got real violent. And unfortunately, a brother brought it up recently online that when the movie Scarface came out, too many people wanted to be drug dealers. You know, because people don't realize in the 80s, a lot of us wanted to do kung fu. That's what it was. You wanted to be Bruce Leroy. You know, you might have wanted to be Rocky, and then it shifted to people who wanted to be Scarface. You know, and I don't know if it was Tariq Nasheed or old Patrice O'Neal thing when they're talking about the movie was like a flop. It wasn't a flop. It just wasn't that popular when it first came out. But then it became a cult classic, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger after that. You know, so now we got that issue. You know, oh, see, that was, and I'm gonna get to that. You know, because I also do remember that in the DMV. You know, because in the DMV they used to have what was it? Is it Avenue E? I want to say it's Avenue E. It's behind a firehouse where you could just get anything. Like the streets was really like 80s, early 90s, depending on where you were at, the streets was really popping to the point where like in the DMV, people could boost anything. Like security was lax in car dealerships and malls and jewelry stores. Not really banks, you know, but all those other things, you can get it. So you was buying, you know, if you dealing with cash, you might get something cash off the lot, or You can get it, you know, from low prices and boosting. So not everybody's cool because everybody's out here. Everybody's trying to, you know, trying to look like Dapper Dan. You know, I got my Gucci, I got my MCM joint. Is that MCM or MGM? I always forget. I never understood that because I was living in New Orleans at the time. So, you know, I didn't know if MCM or MGM because, you know, fights was going on. You know, so now what happened was people are looking at, oh man, I could live the American dream. All I gotta do is do this. It's not a big deal. And just like if you ever watch the show Snowfall, people didn't know how addictive crack could be. They didn't know it was that it'd turn people that bad at first. It was just, hey man, there was another way to make money because weed was a thing. And I remember these type of things because, you know, if you was a child of the 80s, you know for a fact that a lot of people's parents were still like people in the 60s and 70s parents where they had these parties over their houses. And the parties used to be the kids could come, dance and sing and rap for the company, and then it's time to put their butt to bed and an adults party. But the parties became a little bit more reckless where you had adults smoking weed in front of the kids. They went from drinking alcohol in front of the kids to smoking weed in front of the kids, doing lines of cocaine in front of the kids. And some people smoking crack in front of the kids. So you start to see, you know, the morality dip. This is part of the reason why a lot of us, you know, in that 80s, early 90s, was with our grandparents and aunts and uncles and stuff like that because the parents was wild. You know, the parents was wild. So that's why I said, you know, our grandparents would take us, you know, we'll still go to church because they want the kids that you got to get the Lord in you. You're not gonna be out here, you know, in these streets messing up and doing X, Y, and Z. We're not gonna have it like that. So we got that part of the issue. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold or whatever. So, you know, there you go. So, all the while blasting Frankie Beverly and Mays and Blue. Yeah, you're right. So, because that's part of that Studio 54 era. So now it's like everything goes. You know what I'm saying? Because part of the Studio 54 era that led into the crack era was Woodstock free love. You know, you could do whatever you want to do. Da, 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 da. You know what I'm saying? You know, so that was the issue. Georgia, you know. So now we had this issue. So now we're playing this game. And now you're seeing the kids looking at the adults and some of the kids coming up because people wasn't in school like this. And some people weren't in the school like that. You had others who were. So for all you young folks, I'm gonna tell you how it really started going left. And it's just silly. There was a McDonald's commercial with a guy, Calvin. Calvin was walking to McDonald's from work. You know, he was walking. You know, there was a nice little wholesome McDonald's commercials. You know, da-da. Hey Calvin, you gonna go to work, Calvin? Yeah, you gonna do something like Calvin? And there came a point, I think in the early 90s, and Living Color was making fun of that commercial because Calvin was a buster because Calvin had a job. Everybody else was supposed to be like in the streets doing whatever. You know what I'm saying? We making real money. Calvin out here flipping burgers. You know what? You wrong for that. You know, yeah, but it was before that one, Geechee Dan. Like, you know, and Living Color did the same skit, and I think even not Living Color, Saturday Night Live did one of those, if I'm not mistaken. So now we on this thing where, oh man, you know, working a job is like, so now you got people going to the streets. Now Geechee Dan, that was also in Living Color. I kid you not, that was also in Living Color. You know, and I want to say Saturday Night Live, because I forgot who was playing Calvin. It was like Tommy Davidson or somebody like that was playing Calvin because he looked young. But everything started deteriorating because, we got the moral compass started changing. Now we looking back at it and people don't realize where certain things came from. So the rebelliousness of that era, became a norm. Because, true story. See, a lot of y'all remember Magic Johnson. But one of the biggest stories, we're going to go somewhere else. Because with drugs popping in the major cities, Oakland, L.A., Chicago, New York, Pennsylvania, Philly, Miami, New Orleans caught on a little late. But then then it got expanded to the other cities, in Ohio and, Arkansas, or Texas was big in the dope game too. And then they started expanding. So now dope game went all the way across the country. And with that happening, the morals across the country and the Black community started dropping. So now a lot of the stuff you see now is guys thinking everything is okay. And it ain't just because of single mother households, it's because people was in the streets and everything was fair. Because back in the day, it didn't matter how young you were or how old you were. Once you got involved in the streets, everybody was fair game. Everybody was a target. Everybody knew you could lose your life or get locked up. Everybody knew this. That's, y'all look back at that movie Fresh. One with Samuel Jackson and the little kid. Everybody knew it. That's what the Yummy Sandifer thing was about. Everybody knew it. Hold up for a second, because I don't want to. Sorry about that. Like I said, I got a cold. I don't need y'all to see all that. So what happened was, parents knew, grandparents knew. If you joined a gang, if you got in the streets, you was fair game. This is when people started, and people in the 80s, y'all know what I'm talking about. From the 80s and the 90s. This is when children started getting their names written on the lease. That's when that happened. You got bad credit at 18 because you broke the lease at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. You know what I'm saying? They put a credit card in your name, because people wasn't living right. And it was okay to run these games. So that was a chip that failed. It's like, oh, okay, it's all good, Nobody worried about your kid's future like that. People weren't going to college like that. College was for smart people, not just anybody could go. You had to be in the top percentile. Oh, don't worry about that. You know what I'm saying? It's 9. It's the 9th war year. So now we playing this game. So this is when girlfriends used to, guys in the streets would use their girlfriends to sign a lease. And they'll turn an apartment into a trap house real quick. Real quick. The girl will come, she look all presentable. Sometimes it's Section 8, I got kids, and I'm and the man ain't gonna be in the house because, truth be told, the man wasn't gonna be in the house because it's a dope boy. So, that's how they was pushing product out here. That was one of the ways, rather. So Nobody had a problem with kids being around it. Nobody had a problem with doing it to kids. Nobody had a problem with kids being runners. You know what I'm saying? So now those kids grow up and all of this stuff is normal behavior. Normal behavior. So now lying, scamming, stealing, that's how kids used to start, beating up other kids and stealing their clothes and stealing their shoes and stealing their bikes. And, there was no, they started being less and less consequence for that. That's when, kids used to get a whipping in school. Used to have the paddle on the wall or the ruler. And, hey, you get smacked on the hand and you got to bend over in class. And the grandparents was cool with that. But the parents, more and more, were like, you ain't touching my baby. Your baby bad as I don't know what. What you mean you're not touching your baby? And then they started changing the laws in the schools. They started changing the laws in the schools. So now you got that going on. So what was abnormal and was degenerate behavior started becoming normal behavior. Now, going back to the boys in the hood reference, in the 90s in particular, from the 80s and the 90s, one of the biggest places to be pretty much in every major city was the basketball court on the weekend. Any basketball court. There were particular ones that was really popping, but basketball courts on the weekends was where to go. Grown men, teenagers, single ladies looking for their next boyfriend, you at the basketball court. How kids would get their respect, basketball court, because kids would play basketball on the court, sometimes football in the park or in the street or baseball, and that dwindled down that stopped, I think in the 80s when we stopped playing baseball in the street. People play stickball on the East Coast and stuff like that. All that was fun. But what happened was that drug era hit, and that's when people started getting shot at the court. That's when gangsters who quit playing sports or wasn't that good in sports will go to the basketball court and if they lose, I'm finna go to the car. I'm finna go to the trunk. No, it's game point. It's game point. What you mean it's game point? It's game point. You know what I'm saying? You talking all that stuff, but we finna you finna lose this game. Dunk, layup, shot. It's over. Let's shoot up the joint. So a lot of y'all don't realize the reason why the courts ain't what they used to be compared to what we grew up is because the moral compass came from that crack era that even extended onto sports. It even, so now we can't even hoop no more. Because kid ain't trying to get shot playing basketball because you can't hoop, or you've been drinking and smoking weed and you ain't got the lungs to run a full court. That's how a lot of y'all don't even realize. That's why you see less and less full courts. There was a good stretch where you didn't see people run a full court on the basketball court because the drugs and the drinking and the partying mess people up so much. The old cats will run full court still, but they'll be lazy, But young cats, let's just play half. I don't want to run. The hoopers started being at the school lecture. They started meeting at particular parks, indoor, places. And that's where you see all those movies with guys betting on games. That's where that betting on games comes from. And that's where, the Little League Pop Warner football and stuff, and you see these coaches, and the coaches wind up betting on games. They brought that crack era stuff into Little League football. So now, that's where our moral compass is. So now you're saying, why is everything so cool? See, now, when people say, hey man, If somebody gets set up, it's not a big deal. If somebody gets shot, it's not a big deal. If somebody want to fight another person and then that person shoots them and it's, oh, I respect the shooter. That wasn't the case back in the day. You know, you shot somebody, they was like, oh yeah, he shot your boy, he a killer out here. But they was like, man, but he's soft though. Yeah, he shot old boy because he was scared of him. He was scared to fight. He was scared to fight. You know, that's what it was. Like, oh, you know, because dude was gonna break his face. Because, you know, 80s, early 90s, from the 60s, I would say to the early 90s, you still was about it. It was still one of those things where let's throw these hands. Let's see what it is for real. And what you got was, you got more and more people who got shot, and more people accepted that was okay. And now, you know, shooting people is a norm. Because truth be told, cats are scary. So now you get that morality from the immorality from the crack era. Like, oh man, you know, I killed somebody. And y'all didn't realize a lot of the people who got locked up, a lot of these quote unquote killers, because they got locked up, you didn't realize, you know, that they was really soft like that. You didn't realize that people was, you know, they wound up being, you know, on the bad end of a booty bandit being locked up because they was only killers with guns in their hands. They were soft without. You know, and George is an OG. I'm just saying. So now we you know, the compass shift. So now these kids are being born in this, and now it's normal. Now it's normal. You know, that, hey, everything was fair game, man. Everything. So now we play this game. So now guys are trying to figure out, oh man, who's the G's, who's this? Now I gotta get into this part of it. I didn't realize I was this far into it. Because of the RICO Act, the streets was a little bit more organized in the 80s. Excuse me. It was a little bit more organized. And then RICO Act was knocking leaders of the gangs out. And then the leadership switched. And it goes from top down organized to everybody got their own little faction, their own little set. People could do whatever they want. And then all of a sudden, everything goes. You used to have to respect what the OG said. You used to have to follow instructions. You used to get disciplined for doing something somebody told you not to do. And then all that went out the window. Everybody could do anything. They kept pushing the envelope, pushing the envelope, pushing the envelope. So now the street compass is completely gone, because now you really got teenagers just running the streets. You know, some of the guys I grew up with wound up being the leaders in gangs, and we was the same age. I was like, what are you doing being a leader? What are you doing? Because the leadership was that fraction. So what happens when you have 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds running gangs? People following their instructions. That's a recipe for disaster. And some of these parents knew what was going on, and some of these parents didn't know what was going on. So now you got that whole dynamic. And then you add into the mix where people talk about, you know, when Big Mama died? So a lot of people's granddads and grandmothers died. So now who took over the family was your mama, your daddy, maybe your aunts, your uncles. And let's be honest, because of the crack era, they were compromised. And they didn't want the actual pressure of being the leader of the family. So then you had a generation who was raised more so by the grandparents. Now the parents got to take over, and the parents still, even if they're not in the streets like that, they still gravitate to the street life. They're still dating the people in the streets. They're still partying too much. They're still, participating in Freaknik. They're still, hanging out with the wrong crowd. They're still bringing people home, and you looking at these people like, what no? And so this how people had them stories of getting touched and their stuff getting stolen. Cause and people would parents have children that was in the streets, and they'll come home and they'll come home from jail, or they get ran out of town, somebody about to kill them. So then they leave for like a year, 2 years, and they come back and they want to get back in the streets, but they don't. So, and a true story. Like this one guy, I wish I would, when I was in Chicago, my best friend went to school with this cat, and they were really cool. So me and my mother wound up living in the same duplex as this guy and his mom. Didn't know he had a big brother. So he had a big brother, and these was the houses that had like the bars. You got the bars on the front door, the bars on the window. So this fool broke in our house even with the bars on them. And my mother got some diamond earrings. I forgot, either from my boyfriend or my grandmother's, one or the other. Dude came in and stole them. And my mother, she didn't say nothing at first. And one day she cried, and she was like, I said, what's up? And then she's like, mother stole my diamond earrings. And I didn't know who it was. So one day I get outside, and what do I see? It's his older brother standing outside with our bathroom towel on and earrings in his ear, diamond earrings. Now this mug was like 25. I was like in 8th grade. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get bigger and I'm gonna break your face. And I really started lifting weights heavy then. I was like, I'm gonna hurt this dude. And by the time I started getting strong enough, them monkeys moved. And there was a lot of beefs going on that way that people don't realize, because the mother was cool with him robbing, because she was getting a kickback. I didn't know that at that age, but you know what I'm saying? Everything was cool. Stealing from people, breaking into people's houses was cool. And that was when times shifted, where if you broke into somebody's house in the 80s and 90s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, you broke into somebody's house and they had a gun, they would blow your head off. It ain't even a question. But somewhere along the line, and I want to say the mid-90s, people started arresting the people who were shooting the people who was breaking into houses. So now you broke into somebody's house, whether you was a crackhead or a thief, and you got your wig pushed back, you know what I'm saying? And now the owner of the house, or the person living in the house, all of a sudden they get locked up. No, the towel was around his waist, So now these guys, now these people, they became adults and everything was all good. And I gotta get into this, because some of you ladies don't realize, the moral compass extended to y'all dating practices. This is where, if you look at Belly, the movie, if you look at Sunset Park, if you look at He Got Game, the depictions in the 90s, it's a few other movies like this. You had no problem with grown men or grown guys who were in the streets dating teenage girls. That was a norm. Families didn't have, a lot of these families didn't have a problem with you dating their daughter. And some of these girls was going out in public at 15, 16 years old, sneaking in the nightclub, dating grown men. So now, now you got the grown men and the dope boys realizing that, hey man, they want to get the fine girl, but they getting the fine girl that look grown, that's 15, 16 years old. So now it's all good. And now you young fellas, you seeing like, man, these girls always talking to the dope boys. But y'all not telling the truth. These dope boys wasn't in your class. No. The guys with the money in the car wasn't. By the 90s, they weren't your classmates. These were adults. You know what I'm saying? That's why somewhere along in the 2000s, you had the situation where they made an age requirement for the prom. Because you had girls who was in prom, going to prom with guys who was 22, 25, you know, and they in there taking pictures, and it's like, why is this grown dude at the prom? Like, seriously. You know, they used to have the cotillion balls, you know, with the girls and the guys, and guess what? These guys used to be, you know, these guys used to, same thing, because after the cotillion, you go to the hotel. So some of the chicks you knew who got pregnant in high school, they was getting pregnant by grown men. Some of the abortions that you thought about, these girls was having it, you know, at 15, 16, 17, they was getting pregnant by grown men, and they was having these abortions. So now all this stuff becomes normal, fair game. So now what you're seeing is, you know, 20, 30 years later, and why is everything like this? Because what wasn't a norm in the early 80s is now a norm in 2022, you know? Hey, say it again. You know, hold up. I got you, man. Hold up. You know, George, you know, sanitation. I put the link in the chat for you, George. It's just for George. You know what I'm saying? But the moral compass changed. I used to know I mean, we used to talk to the girls, y'all ain't grown. It's like, yo, now y'all don't realize why these girls out here twerking and this, that, and the third. Y'all don't realize why these older women was dating younger men, because that Antoine Fisher thing was popping. Because old women, you know, that was in the streets, some of the younger boys were bigger and attractive. So guess what? The older women was doing the same thing. So now you got what you consider a predatory environment. And everybody was like, it's all good, it's all cool. And now since, like I said, the grandparents is dead, the parents is still like da 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 da. That's why you see less, you know, less people actually, even the church people now. You know, I got you, George. You know, the king of the sanitation. What's up, George? Oh, my bad. You know, things have changed drastically.
You can hear me?
I hear you, man. How you doing? You smiling?
I'm good, man. Hey, man, you bringing up memories, man, of them days. Man. we still live in the effects of it, and people don't know. That's why I laugh when I hear like manosphere talking points and these women that bash men talking points, because we don't know that we're living the effects of the 80s and the 90s and a lot of traumas that was never dealt with. And I grew up in that. Like I seen it. I tell people all the time, a lot of y'all girls be up here, y'all be mad and talking trash. You didn't see your mom at the Freaknik. You didn't see your mom at the Greek picnic, Jones Beach, Essence Festival, my Memorial Day weekend in Miami or Cancun back in the 90s. You ain't see your mom when she was turning up, or your dad when we was just running wild, being irresponsible, having irresponsible sex. Like some of y'all was born, your mom got pregnant with you in the pool in Cancun. She ain't never tell you that she told you your daddy wasn't shit, but she ain't tell you she was a hoe in the 90s. We can't have this type of transparency and honesty, because I don't think that people today, the stuff that you breaking down, explaining, they had to be there to see it. They don't understand what you're saying. Like you had to be there to see the 80s and the early 90s. It's a different world.
a lot of people don't know even with the parenting thing. When people were scoring in the 80s, they used to cut the dad's head out of the pictures in the photo album. See, a lot of y'all, a lot of you kids, a lot of us kids and adults, we didn't know our dads. If our dads didn't live with us, we didn't know our dads tried to call us until Call ID came out, and we would see the number on the phone.
Bro,
so
man.
The lie was always there.
Remember, no social media, was no cell phones. Somebody beat you. Remember this, L.A.R. You ride in the car with your homie. Yo, pull over real quick. I use the phone. Pull over real quick. You get a beat. You got to go to the phone booth. You had to wait. If you beat your girl, you had to wait till she called you back. But that was just a normal way of life. We didn't know nothing about having cell phones and stuff like that. So it was Jones Beach freak. Yeah, all of that stuff was crazy. But the problem is you got a group of people today on both sides that don't take, like everything the L.A.R. is breaking down, everybody else is to blame but themselves for the things that we partook in and what we passed down. What we passed. The 80s and the early 90s was a time when young black men had a lot of money. And these men, as dysfunctional as it was, they had their children's mom and they had 2 other girlfriends. Some of y'all was raised by your stepfather that had a wife, but he came to pick your report card up. That house you live in, he brought that house for your mom. The cars, your clothes. That man had 3 families. I mean, I'm not saying that it's right, but this is the moral compass of the crack era. This is what was going on. These men of the 80s, a lot of these men took care of 2-3 families, L.A.R. Dude, he had a wife, but he was your dad too.
And y'all don't want to, and one thing that when people talk about the stepdaddies, a lot of people don't realize there were guys working at the plant, working on the railroad, working as truckers, working at the electric company as working on the lines. These guys would have 2 kids, maybe 3 kids, and they knew one of them kids wasn't theirs, but they took care of the kid because they knew nobody was going, the kid doesn't have a dad because they don't quote unquote know who the dad is.
So I'll be his daddy. I came up in the last era of that. I came up being a stepdad back then wasn't nothing. It was, what's crazy, L.A.R.? It was kind of honorable to be a stepfather back in the day. It was honorable. Like, see, it's a different world we live in today. See, people will call you a simp, but you couldn't call those men and the men that I learned from simps. These were man's men. And it was an imperfect world because the guys was running wild, the girls was running wild. Like I said, it was so much money. It was dangerous. It didn't really get, I'm gonna tell you, L.A.R., because we about the same age. I think I'm like 2 years older than you. It didn't get dangerous until my era. And around 1990, 91, 92. When my big homies died or went to jail, we didn't have the wisdom. What happened was we inherited blocks that was doing $30,000, $40,000 a day. But we didn't have the wisdom and the intelligence that our big homies had to diffuse certain. You giving. That's when the New Jack Hustler video came out. You giving 17-year-olds. This 17-year-old got 2 blocks doing $50,000 a day. He moving 30 joints. He got 4 condos, 6 cars, but he's 17. You can't tell him nothing. He doesn't have the ability to rationalize. So by the time he go to jail, he got 12 baby moms and 16 kids because the girls want all the hot boys. So around from 90 to 96, I think that's when the murder rate just exploded. The 80s was more partying. But if you check the murder rates in Chicago, 1994, it was like 980. Detroit.
I was there.
Yeah,
I graduated in 97. So, you know what I'm saying? So I saw, and I moved from New Orleans. Initially, I moved from New Orleans to the DMV, to Chicago, to New Orleans, back to Chicago. So I got to see it. And my older cousin, the one I said that got robbed with the Uzi, he was like, "You ultra hood, dog, because you was there when everything was popping." I'm like, but I wasn't, and some of y'all don't know this. There were a lot of latchkey kids who wasn't in the streets, but they had been around the streets so much they knew how it worked.
Yep.
They like everybody keeps talking about, we was poverty and we had to be in the streets. I'm gonna just say it was 50-50. It was a bunch of poor kids who didn't want no parts of the streets and was like, look, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna get these books, I'm gonna play these sports. I ain't doing none of that.
You know why? There was no social media back then. Nobody was vibing for clicks or trying to be something they wasn't.
Right.
I grew up in an era where on our block, you might have 12 drug dealers and 2 shooters. Everybody wasn't a shooter. Nope. Shooters was minimal. Everybody wasn't a shooter, and shooters was feared, not really respected. The shooter, growing up, I had homies that didn't sell no drugs. We had homies like, yo, it's about to pop off, man. Go ahead down the street, man. Or yo, once you give me a package, nigga, your mama killed me. We didn't encourage our homeboys to be in the streets. It was a different world back then. Everybody, listen, back in the day, the OGs, when the project buildings was up in all the major cities before they knocked them down, you could tell them, L.A.R, you couldn't just go on a block and sell dope. It's crazy.
You couldn't go sell dope. You couldn't disrespect old women walking. Women could go to the corner grocery store and not be bothered. People would carry their groceries, even the dope boys would. People would know everybody's people, even when they wasn't supposed to be doing stuff. And it was like, listen, it really popped. People don't realize what happened when it got violent. It was popping off at night.
Yeah.
And then when everybody started getting locked up, then everything went from day to night. Like there was no,
because we stopped respecting the rules. What happened was back in the day, when I was 16, 17, if I was beefing with somebody or something popped off at the basketball court, I couldn't just shoot the basketball court up. Because if I did that, because back in the day, remember, we rolled in crews. It wasn't no individualism back in the day. I tell people, don't look at the days when it's just all me, I. We rolled in packs back in the day. So if I shot the basketball court up, they might say, yo, that dude rolled with trucking them. So that come back on him. I had to make a phone call and say, yo, it's popping down. Unless something just popped off at the spur of the moment, we had to get permission. You couldn't just go do what you want to do. Nowadays, it's like that. Most of the shootings and killings was drug related or over women. It didn't spill over into the greater public. If it did, it was a mistake and it was rare. So like I said, it was a different time. Like L.A.R couldn't just move to Philly and come on a block and sell dope. Nigga, who is this nigga? First of all, who your family? Like everybody, the OGs wasn't letting you do
cop,
that.
Nigga. You a cop, you something. Because you just showing up here. You knew better. Like what?
And on top of that, they wasn't letting you. Listen, if the big homies knew your daddy and your daddy was a working man and your mom worked down at the hospital, they wasn't letting you sell drugs.
One of the things I tried to tell people about, even like the 60s and 70s, that was like the early 80s, people didn't realize there was a lot of grown men who was working class men that gangsters didn't even want to mess with, because they would be going to the bars and they'd be like, look, you touch my family, boy, I will beat you in front of everybody. Or gangsters used to be scared of working class men, because it was hey, that nigga went to Vietnam. He is not playing with you.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? See, this is the part where I always tell people when this YouTube shit and these young people, when people was like getting mad at Alpo and the Alpo story, I was like, bro, you wasn't there. Do you even know Alpo? Why you internalizing Alpo as your story? Oh, Alpo was a snitch. You wasn't there. Watch this, right? I'm gonna break this point. I grew up in the era where I seen JBM, Junior Black Mafia, Craig Haynes' crew, different crews. Watch this. These dudes riding around in 300Es, 190s, Broncos, all kinds of jewelry. When they came on the block and they seen Miss Francis and Miss Jenkins and Mr. Clarence, they hid their cars around a corner and hid their jewelry because they didn't want nobody to know they was drug dealers. Go look up the story of the preacher crew. When the preacher was in trial, he turned his hair from his mother, and he was looking at the wall. He wouldn't, because he couldn't look at his mother when they was naming all the things he did. That shit was shame. Y'all got the story twisted. Y'all got
I'm sorry. You got it, George.
These big time gangsters, the way that they tell the story today, most of them dudes was stone cold killers, but not on the blocks or the communities they came from. They was shamed. They didn't want Miss Jenkins to know that he killed 15 people. They hid that shit. You didn't know. Man, listen, they lied to y'all in these stories, man. I was there. I seen it. The working man, Mr. Clarence, that was the plumber or was the mailman, he most likely was like an uncle or a big homie to the local drug dealer. So you didn't disrespect Mr. Clarence, and he kept his 38 on him. Mr. Clarence.
And Mr. Clarence was not say something wrong to him. He flattened you right on the spot. No questions asked. And you knew it was gonna happen.
Different breed of men. Different.
The reason I talk, because when people look at these shows, like I was looking at the Wu-Tang show, and I was like, people don't peep it. When they hear all of these street stories and drug stories, you don't realize 99% of these people wasn't really making money that you glorify in music. They was not drug dealers. They were, if at best, they were horrible drug dealers who were small time. They might turn that double that 8 ball, and they ain't gonna double it anyways because they're gonna buy, something with it, and they can't keep it. They can't grow. They couldn't grow an 8 ball. But people don't realize it's like we've glorified so much that we got kids in the suburbs trying to be super hood, and it's like your family wasn't like that, bro.
Nope.
Like
they being told a lie, L.A.R. A lot of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. You had some degenerate people back then, but for the most part, the dope boys back in the early '80s and all throughout the '80s, a lot of them took care of the hood and took care of a lot of people in the hood. It was a difference. I'm gonna tell you, my generation was the generation when we didn't give a fuck. We was young, ignorant, disrespectful. We still disrespected the elders, but we was a little more out in the open with everything. We didn't have no wisdom, meaning because we lost that covering we had. Once the 90s came, but the 80s OGs, man, a lot of things, man. And then on top of that, as crazy as we was in the 90s, we was afraid of the 80s OGs. We ain't play with them.
I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna 90s dudes would kill people's girlfriends to get their due.
Yeah.
80s dudes was not playing that game. See, 90, like people don't realize, like I know so many stories of girls who was dating drug dealers in the 80s. They might not even get locked up. Shit, I got you, hold on. But in the 90s, I know of so many women who got shot. They broke in the house. They broke in her house. They chased him down. They followed him to her house, or they was in the car. They shot the whole car with her in it. And there was a lot of girls who died because guys didn't care.
Yeah, that's the night. That was my generation.
That was when people would shoot up the whole house. Didn't care who was in it, because such and such lived there, or such and such work out of there. So we just gonna shoot up the whole house. They had it was because, truth be told, and I hate to say this, but I don't hate to say this, cats in the 90s were very scared of confrontation face to face. And that extended all the way. Now, 2000 it got worse, 2010 it got worse, 2020 now it's super, super bad where, everybody got to keep that stick on you. And it's like people used to tell you, old school people would tell you, yo, ain't no gun in jail, bro. So you get locked up for a murder and all you got is a gun on you. You ain't finna make it like you think you're gonna make it when you get behind the wall.
I'm gonna give you something even crazier though. In the 80s, what I learned was, even during the gangbang era, during Chicago, Detroit, DC, parts of New York, the street hoods in Philly rumbling, I saw something that didn't happen in the 90s. See, in the 80s, they was getting so much money, right? Most of the OGs from different sets, they got along. I would go places and I would see, well, damn, ain't we one with 17th Street? I just saw Big Mike and Sean. Them niggas, they talk, they get along. It was the underlings on the ground that was doing the fighting. These dudes was getting so much money that they would come together. Because I remember my old G told me, he said, listen, a guy had got robbed for $30,000. That's exactly what he told me. I said, well, I remember I said, why they didn't go kill him? He said, if you shoot him and you get locked up for 10 days, say you making $30,000 a day, in 10 days, you done lost 300,000. Say you was locked up for a whole month, you lost over $1 million, over 30,000. So their mindset in the 80s was more different. How could we come together to squash this beef about money? When they got out the way, we wasn't organized and making money like that. We was only making money in our circles as opposed to citywide. So we became more violent because fuck L.A.R. and his crew. Where back in the day, to coexist, we would work together. Once you got rid of that element, it just got super violent to the point where we didn't care nothing about nothing to nobody. In the 80s, if I robbed L.A.R. boss might make a phone call to mine and I got to get that shit back because it could cause a war. The 90s, no, that was over with. That was over with. So, and it got worse. It degenerated further down because we lost the power that we had, that hovered the city.
Yeah. You got it, She.
Yeah, I agree, man. The whole thing, it was a code, man. And a lot of guys lost touch. Like basically when the OGs left the streets, the codes went with them. Just like they said, them young boys up there in Chicago, when them old heads left, a lot of people said it changed the game. Even, man, down here in the South in the A, man, like you would never have no young boys out here slanging on the corner. But when the old heads started moving away, because they pushing them out, little young boys trying to threat the OGs and they trying to cross them over, old heads, they knew. They was like, man, this ain't the game no more. I'm finna go ahead and push up. Young boys coming in, they like, hey, go get that little young boy from out of school. He look all rough. Put this in his hand, let him go get some money. Or, hey, we're gonna go over here and we're gonna do this to all these people over here. Ain't nobody gonna say nothing about it. Because the OGs kept the peace. I knew old heads, they was like, man, look, ain't nobody slinging in this neighborhood. This neighborhood is productive. These old people over here, they making money. They doing it their way, the legit way. These are the people that when they grow up, these are the people gonna get us out of jail. So don't go over here on this block. When them OGs, they started pushing them out, nah, man, everything was free turf. Either I go take the turf or, or worst off, I'm killing everybody on the corner.
The new Jack Hustle.
And I gotta just add this to us because a lot of y'all youngsters younger folks don't realize this. A lot of us knew the times changed because a lot of us kids, we either played football, baseball, or basketball in the 80s, 90s. And what happened was thugs used to play football and basketball. But what happened was, and they used to be some of the best players, but thugs got soft in the 90s and they used to quit because they didn't want no physicality. So we already knew the streets was changing because everybody, the vast majority of your drug dealers in the 90s was people who got hit playing football too hard and they quit. And then they went to the streets. And that's how they clicked up. It was about 5-10 dudes who he got knocked out running a slant and he man, forget all y'all. But then he kept that anger and he took it to gangbang. And people was looking at him like, bro, seriously?
Hey, L.A.R. I grew up in the era, I'm gonna tell you as a kid, I seen this shit. I grew up in the era where I seen the era I grew up in, stone cold killers. I grew up in the era with dudes that were stone cold killers that was known for having bodies. I'm talking about bodies, multiple. When you got all the crews together at basketball courts, I seen dudes pass guns off. Hold this, I'm about to knock this nigga the fuck out. It was more honorable to knock this dude out from 24th Street than shoot him. I was on a basketball court. I couldn't have been older than 12. Sitting on the basketball watching the OGs play. I remember when Junior Black Mafia came up and South Philly came up. And everybody was about to start running because they doing some shootout. Old head pulled out a gun about this big and gave it to his homie to hold and went on the court and knocked the ball the fuck. They start rumbling. Too slow. Everybody was scared. But that was the 80s type of dudes. These dudes was killers, but they would fight you, stab. They was a different breed. My generation, they just want to shoot the whole basketball court up. It was more honorable. Like those guys back then, they wanted to be known not just for killers, like they wanted to be known for being tough guys. Like these dudes will pull up on your block in a motorcycle, get off the motorcycle, and beat the shit out of the dude on your hood, and then ride back. It's a different time.
Like the reason I'm saying what I'm saying now is because you got kids and young men who don't realize there was an era when people were stealing starter jackets. There was an era when people were stealing people's sneakers. There was the era after that where people were breaking into your locker and stealing your triple fat goose if you had it, and people was all and when you look at these shows and these depictions like Power Kanan, like BMF, like Snowfall, like what is the other joint? What is the other joint that's out? It's another one, the Wu-Tang Story. And you'll see, a lot of these kids chose to be in the streets. They didn't have to be. They chose to because they wanted a fun life. It wasn't really forced on them like that. So now that immorality goes from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, and not everybody who thinks being black is being super hood don't realize you got people who grew up in the crack era making black look like something it wasn't. So now it's a problem. Sheesh, you there, man? You got it.
Nah, man, yeah. Hey, dude, it was crazy. Like my older brother, man, certified with it. You know, he used to be in the game. We moved up to the East Coast down here in Georgia. He was still riding like that, but hey, you in a whole nother turf. Even though he was, pushing and doing what he was doing, dudes was coming at him all day. I remember one time he came home. Dude came home in his socks, his boxers, a nice white t-shirt, and that's it. That's it. Shoes, he had the Jordans on. Fresh new pair of Jordans. He had the Raiders starter jacket with the Raiders hat, Levi's. Took the whole fit off of him.
But the stick-up boys would rob you back then. They didn't shoot you.
Yeah. They just say take it all off.
They stick-up boys. They would go from corner to corner. It wasn't about a robbery homicide. It was about I got robbed one time. Dude walked up and put a knife under my throat and said, "Keep your chin in the air, nigga." Went in my pockets and robbed. But back in the day, I was hardcore in the streets. I got caught slipping. It's part of the game.
See, I gotta do 2 stories. One, movie, everybody knows. Second, true story when I was in high school. Movie. Y'all remember when give me a double with cheat, don't get shot, over this order. Everybody remember that scene. But nobody ever, for all you people who watched that movie, how many of y'all asked how the hell he get them Dayton's off? Do y'all know?
No.
Hit a hammer?
He took it to a chop shop or something.
Cause I was like, y'all don't realize to get them Dayton's off, what did he have to do? He robbed the dude for the car and then he just showed up with the Dayton's in the next scene.
Yeah.
So that would mean either he got the double with cheese and took the car and left his car right there. Or what? He took a hammer. And he didn't take a hammer because you had to take the tires right there in broad daylight.
Yep.
So the other thing was, and this is for the people who are younger today. This is the problem with a lot of you young cats who want to have attention. And this is where attention goes wrong. High school field trip. Our school goes to, I was on the west side. I wasn't even on this field trip. We go from the west side because that's where I lived at. They went to the south side. So he was on the left. We say the gang's down on the left, but he went to the side of town with the gangs that was on the right. So this fool if all y'all seen that the Straight Outta Compton movie when the dude was on the bus, flashing at the gangsters in a different gang, he pulled that stunt. They ran up on the bus just like that.
Damn.
School bus. And what happened was they robbed the whole bus. But guess what? The guy who wanted to show off in front of the gangsters, people y'all don't know, back in the day, used to have field trips, and you might go to the mall. So you could go to field trip, and then the field trip might take you to the mall, and then you go back to the school. So this fool had like $700 on him. So they robbed him particularly, gave him back $20 and said, thanks for the come up.
I got some funnier than that. As a kid, let me say this. Remember, y'all, we talking 30, 35 years ago, so there was no social media or cell phones, right? So if you live in Philadelphia, we don't know nothing about gangbanging in Chicago. What is Chicago? I live in Philly. I don't know nothing about Chicago. Remember, there's no social media. L.A. We didn't know nothing about gangbanging in L.A. till we saw Minister Society, Boys in the Hood. I live in Philly. People getting killed every day. So it was all you knew where you lived at. I knew about DC and New York because we was 2 hours in between both cities. So I knew about the East Coast. So when they had the song called Fuck Compton, it was because they was talking all this Compton shit. We ain't like, nigga, we on the East Coast. They killing each other every day, right? Watch this. I went from, in my hood, Southwest, I live in 58th Street. We went to the swimming pool on 49th Street. Man, but you had to walk through 53rd Street to get to the pool. 53rd Street niggas let us walk through to get to the pool. On the way back, though, I had some Bo Jacksons. They took my Bo Jackson. The boy robbed me. He robbed me for all the money was in my pocket. He took my glasses, and then he took my Bo Jackson. He was like, yo, I start walking. He said, no, go that way. And don't turn around, nigga. Just keep walking. But I ain't had nothing on my feet. He took my shoes and shit. But back in the day, it wasn't about shooting people. It was more about the robberies. Because, see, back then, you had drug dealers and you had stick-up boys that didn't sell drugs. They just robbed drug dealers or anybody they can rob. It wasn't about catching a homicide like they do now. You rob somebody for $2 and you still shoot them. Like, that wasn't happening like that.
That's why for all you people who watch The Wire, all of those stories are from the 80s. That's why it wasn't that many murders in the thing. Mm-hmm. It was retrofitted to present times. But all of the stories that they got was from people who was doing stuff in the 80s. So some of them older guys you see in The Wire, there was actual street dudes in the 80s who gave them that story to put on HBO. Yeah. How do I know this? Because I lived in the DMV as a kid at the time. I was there when Doug Williams was the Super Bowl quarterback, and when Marion Barry got caught with that set me up. I was there then. You know what I'm saying?
And he got reelected.
Yes.
But I'm gonna tell you, L.A.R.
You can go whenever you want. My bad.
Oh, okay. But look, L.A.R. real quick, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of people do not in today's time don't realize that they're looking at the world today as it was yesterday. There was no social media. We didn't know anything about LA gangbanging in Philadelphia in 1987, unless you was a drug dealer that had a West Coast connect. We didn't know nothing about Chicago gang. What was Cabrini Brink Project? We had Richard Allen. We only knew what was going on where we lived at. So that was the world. Remember, if you lived in the south side of Chicago, you had to go to the west side to know what happened, what was happening over there. There was no social media. You didn't know them over there.
Truth be told, you got to sheet my head.
No, that's how it was. Like when I grew up on the West Coast. I was actually born in New Mexico. Moved to Arizona with my sister. They was banging out there. Lived in L.A. They was banging out there. Like the only reason we moved from L.A. It was a little kid. He played for some red team. I forgot the name, but they was a red team he played for. He had on the red pinstripes with the red cleats, the red hat, and he ran back to the house to get his bat. They put it on the news. Little dude got hit. I think he was about like 9 years old or something like that. And after that, it was a whole uproar about the dudes in the gangs. And my mom was like, "Nope, you ain't staying out here." She was like, "Bro, you gonna get popped." Because out there in New Mexico and Arizona we stayed at, they had the gang war, but they didn't mess with the kids. That was always the rule. You never mess with the kids. Even though my brother was in the gang, they knew of my brother. Like one dude, he was like, "Yeah, I know your brother. I ought to punch you in your face right now." But he was like, "Bro, I'm gonna let you keep walking." Like that's how it was. Like they was threatening something, but they would never touch a kid.
People don't realize this, but really all the gangs the only two places had gangs. It was California and Illinois. That was it. Because all of the black gangs are offshoots of the Black Panthers. And where were they biggest at? California and Illinois. Yeah. So all this gang stuff people are talking now, people don't realize. When I was in Chicago, if you was you repping a gang and you from a different city, like, you from where? What you doing? Like, what?
We thought that was nut shit. We thought it was corny, like gang banging. Don't get out of here, nigga. I'm trying to get money.
In New Orleans, it was all wards. You from the 3rd, you from the 5th, you from the 7th, you from the 9th, you from the 17th. Like, that's how it was. You know, here in Houston, North Side, South Side. That's how it was. You know, the DMV, people know. Baltimore, first of all, DC and Baltimore don't mess with each other, but the both sides of Baltimore don't mess with each other like that.
That's Philly.
Right. So it was always, it was sectioned off. There was no such thing as gangs.
That's how it is in the South.
You got a sheet.
I'm just gonna say that's how it is in the South. It's by zone. You know, I'm in zone 6, but I used to say in zone 3. It's all sectioned off by the zone.
It didn't work on the East Coast. The gangs like they did. You had gangs in New York though, but because you had New York City and Philadelphia was a gold mine back then. But Philadelphia was like Oakland. Nobody that was from out of town could come to Philadelphia. New Yorkers went to everywhere but Philly. Because Philly was killing each other from block to block, so out of towners couldn't come. But the mentality, when I start going out to California, like Culver City and different places, I seen the dynamics of the West Coast. On the East Coast, if you was a big time drug dealer, you wasn't trying to do the game because you wanted to be able to sell drugs to everybody. I seen on the West Coast, this part, you had people that lived in Los Angeles all their life, but never been on this side of town. They couldn't go, and that shit was crazy to me. You couldn't, on the East Coast, we couldn't live like that because if I got work to get rid of, I gotta see everybody. You just knew that I couldn't come to your side of town without a chaperone. That's all. That's how it was on the East Coast. But let me ask you, L.A.R., because as we talk about this, let's talk about the women of the era. This generation's mothers. Let's talk about what their mothers was doing. Because we talk about what the niggas was doing. Can we be honest? And let's talk about what Geraldine and Bernadette was doing and Roxanne was doing back in the 90s. For all you 26, 30-year-olds, let's talk about y'all mamas.
Yo, I'm gonna tell y'all something y'all don't wanna, a lot of y'all don't want to admit. Y'all remember y'all mama getting smashed by somebody in house and she didn't care that you heard. Or she did it right in front of you. You know what I'm saying? Y'all act like that didn't happen. We know that stuff happened. Y'all don't want to talk about how you might get dropped off, and I hate to do this, you might get dropped off to a family member house and your family member talking bad about your mama being a thot. Like, here she go again. You dropping this baby off over here again so you can go do God knows what with God knows who. And
that was grandma. Leave. That was grandma saying that.
Oh no, it wasn't just grandma. Because sometimes grandma get tired of it. And now you got to go to somebody else's house. You know? I
give you one worse. What about when it's 3 siblings and 2 of them got their daddy, but the one don't got the daddy? And she be like, don't worry about it, I'm your mama and your daddy. But she don't tell you that she was loose. Remember the song? They had Every Other City We Go, we see the same hoes. That song was made for a reason. Listen, for all the dope boys, right? That was Essence Festival in the Bahamas, Miami, all the fights that they were having in Vegas and Los Angeles. All the things where the dope boys traveled, the women traveled too. The dope boys had girls that they was messing with. A lot of them was your mama. The reason why your daddy only come around every other holiday or something, because he never really knew if he was yours or not. He treats your brother different because he know that little Hakeem is his son. He wasn't sure about you because your mama never told you that he caught your mom in the car with Fred from uptown. Or when he was locked up for 6 months, she got pregnant then. See, she don't tell you the whole story because see, back in the day, I'm gonna tell y'all something really back in the day. It was so much money. When your mom got in an argument with your pop and they broke up for 2 weeks, man, it was 1,000 other niggas waiting in line, especially if your mom was a looker. because it was so many other dudes with money. So your mom can go from, your mom was juggling a nigga in Germantown, a nigga in North Philly, and a nigga in South Philly, all at the same time. Let's keep it a buck.
So what some of you cats don't realize is what happened in the 80s, that spilled over into the 90s. Regular everyday dudes could move around, especially if they had a little change. They could move around like entertainers and R&B singers, because R&B singers was the guys known to have women in every city. See, some of y'all aunties and y'all moms and y'all grandmas was a side chick to the OJs and the Whispers and, you know, one of James Brown's chicks and one of Marvin Gaye's chicks when he came to town, and an Isley Brothers chick, or, you know, Ronald Isley and Ernie. A lot of y'all don't know that spilled over into the streets and the dope boys. Now he talking to her. Now he talking to her. Now he talking to her. I'm a prime example. And I hate to do this, but I don't. If you think about Steve Harvey's current wife,
she was passed
that's
away.
how that evolved.
Yes.
A lot of y'all
But you know why? But you know why, real quick, L.A.R? The dope boys had more money than the entertainers. And see, basketball players didn't get paid these astronomical contracts back in the day. The drug dealers had more money than the ball players.
That's why I said back in the day, people, Magic Johnson and Pee Wee Kirkland was at the same time. People don't know that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of you ladies don't, a lot of the things that y'all do with, you know, the family courts and the child support, that comes from your mom thought it was cool. See, now people say you can get an abortion. You say that to your grandmama?
Oh, that
she'll take that old wooden broom.
She sent you down south.
Yeah. But if you say I want to get an abortion, they'll take that old thick wooden broom and beat the shit out of you. Because they say the old school people are like, I had you, so you gonna have this baby. We're gonna still send you down south, but you gonna have this baby. So it was a problem, you know.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want, fam. I ain't gonna hold you back.
Yeah, you know, they always say, if you, like with the men, if you man enough to make the baby, you man enough to take care of it. Same thing with them girls, you know. All the time, them girls will sit there, be hot in the pants, and they be like, look at them. See, it's gonna matter of time. Her little motherfucking fast ass gonna be out there doing it. And it always came to a principle when the girls always say, oh, that's her freaky self. Oh, it won't happen to me. Next thing you know, like they say up north, you bubbled up. You got the baby, and now what you gonna do? Because, you know, just like you said, kids always went to their grandma. When you got the baby, you wouldn't see them for a couple of months. They down south. The next thing you know, you come back, you all fat, and hey, what's wrong with you? Nothing.
I'm just gonna take it. I'm gonna take it there, L.A.R.
Okay, because I was about to beat you to it.
I'm gonna take it there. I'm gonna hurt some of y'all feelings. See, because your mom stayed with the baby, she was looked at as infallible and she couldn't make no mistakes. But your mom was no different than your daddy. And the thing is, I come from an era of when they would rent out whole 2-3 floors of hotel rooms, and girls be running in and out of rooms. Two dudes, double beds, having sex on the bed, other one having sex on the floor. Your mom never told you about the things that she was doing. She just told you your daddy wasn't shit. But at my age, I come from that. I was a part of all of that. So, I wish we was able to, but we couldn't. We could pull up footage from Freakniks from 1991, 92, 93. Your mom got a thong twerking on the back of a Wrangler truck. Don't stop, get it. And later on that night, for whoever got the whoever paying off the most dollar, that's who she on top of. That's what was going on. Bike week in South Carolina. Oh yeah, the 90s, 94. All of that stuff is going on. Virginia Beach weekend is going down, right? So what I'm saying was the dudes, the dope boys at that time had more money than the athletes and entertainers. So back in the day, they would take the whole block. The whole block is going. So we go deep. We bought the girls too. So girls would go out of town to Alabama, Texas, or all those places just so they can trick. Or I'm going down here. I'm gonna make about 4,000 or 5,000 this weekend. She going down here to trick to make money, man. That was your mama and them in the 90s. She said y'all delivered now.
So I'm gonna take it there because I'm gonna just expound on what you said. A lot of y'all don't realize you got sent to your dad or your grandmother or your aunts and uncles for spring break, Christmas break, and the summer while your mama was in the streets. See, they knew what was going down. So now when you see these young ladies out here, I'm going to the concert, I'm going to this, I'm going to that, they moms did the same thing. Some of y'all, that's your grandma did the same thing. Some of y'all don't want to take it there, but real talk.
What they always say about the old people, when them looks start to diminish, they couldn't play the game no more. Sad to say it, they went to church. A lot of they you know, and it was bad because you was the same hypocrite out here telling these young girls don't do that, and you was promiscuous in the mug. You know, you had your run, but now that you old, you can't be out there hanging with them young girls no more. They got you beat. You trying to trick and do all that stuff. It ain't like that no more. Cause man, y'all brought back some memories about Atlanta though. Man. That Freaknik, man, that was a whole nother ball game, bro. I was in middle school.
Footage up. 1991, 92, Freaknik, Texas weekend they had down in Houston.
Party.
Yeah, down in Houston. Oh, you gonna see your mama with a string bikini on, shaking her cheeks. That's your mama. She probably got pregnant there too.
See, my older cousin had paper because he was an athlete. So for all y'all who don't know this, they had that type of event in every city. See, he talking about, first of all, you got Capitol Beach Party in Houston. You got Black Expo in Indianapolis. You got, the Taste of Chicago it was a black particular part of that.
We had the Greek picnic.
Y'all had Greek. Essence, that's what Essence was in New Orleans, really. Then you had Black Bike in Myrtle Beach.
South Carolina.
Then you had
Virginia Beach weekend.
Then you had
Jones
the
Beach,
one in Miami.
Memorial Day weekend, Miami, Jones Beach, New York.
Okay. What was the one? And then they would have the events. Some of y'all don't know, like people would go to Atlantic City, they have events because like you said, they're boxing. Then you had the events and even in the DMV, they would have them events and them go-go parties.
Oh my God.
When let me tell y'all something. It got bad when Doing the Butt came out with EU from about 88 to about 95, especially at Howard. Oh yeah, and that's what it was. All the HBCU homecomings was a problem.
Oh my God, yes.
All of them.
Let's see, the Delaware State up here. See what I'm saying is we know what dudes was doing, but because the women all of us was irresponsible. But in our irresponsibility, because the woman got stuck with the baby, her irresponsibility got overlooked. But she still had an unwanted child or unprepared child, or was doing unprepared stuff. The thing is, Delaware. Listen, those homecoming weekends, man. Listen, it was.
Yeah, I get $10 to go to the store real quick.
No.
There you go.
So I went up 50.
Hold on, just wait till I get. Just wait till But those, but see, me, I got my shit together. That's why I got a son that live in the house with me. He ain't gotta call me on the phone. He can come downstairs and say, "Dad, can I get $10?" That's because I got my shit together. but those was the times. Those was the time where a lot of you young guys be like, "Damn, man, my dad wasn't shit." Everything wasn't just your dad's fault, y'all. I'm telling you, man. It was, but you had to be there to see. We didn't know L.A.R. the destruction that we was causing, because I'm gonna tell you, as grandmama and them was one thing, but before the crack era, there was a heroin era, especially that ravaged Chicago to the East Coast.
Right.
And a lot of our mamas was hoes. They don't, grandmama no wasn't, but our mamas was hoes in the 70s. Oh, Superfly era. Oh, they was big time hoes. I see all that. And I listen to my uncle. They was doing everything that we did. They did it first. The difference was real quick. Watch this. When Little Kim did that pose and came out in that goddamn cat suit, all your mamas was going to the concerts in them goddamn cat suits, and niggas was at the let out of the club. Back in the day, your daddy met your mom at a club let out back in '95 with one of them goddamn cat suits.
I'm gonna tell y'all how Black America split, and all of you who were kids, y'all really didn't notice this. The people who wanted to be in families, they went to the Luther Vandross concert. They went to the Anita Baker concert. They went to the Frankie Beverly and Mays concert. They were still dibbling dabbling, but they were more united. When you started seeing people go to the
that Luke
Jodeci, Luke, yeah, what's your Too Short for sure.
Too Short, the 95 South Boys, all the Brump Shaker, all them, they was in. When you went to 95 South Boys, the tag team, all that from the A, Raheem the Dream, you know, you was in there. You already knew. You already knew. Like he telling Raheem gonna rock this steady. Y'all ain't ready. Hey, all them people girls be jumping around, throwing their hands in the air. Don't hit them with the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I'm saying? Looks in the house, man. When that junk come on, freaks come on, they come on.
The old school trifling people would listen to Millie Jackson and really a lot of the blues, Johnny Taylor, they all that type of stuff, because you knew they were Clarence Carter. They was listening to
Clarence
that.
Carter, yeah. I've been stroking.
Yeah, so it was listening to that. So you kind of listen like, oh, okay, you was wild. But y'all people didn't take into consideration like, yo, where we going? He said H-Town concerts. You know, R. Kelly was the early 90s to the mid 90s.
R. Kelly was killing the game too. Did yeah. He had, remember Summer Bunnies that song Summer Bunnies came out. I'm gonna tell you something. Coming from the East Coast, and L.A.R, because you live in the South, the brother live in the South, y'all might be able to see. Coming from the East Coast, because we get cold, it get real cold. There's some things that we didn't see. When I went down South, like the girls got freaky, but when I went down South, and I seen like 6ix9ine boys and all that, and the way that they would dance, and then I was in San Diego one year. I think this was '96. And I remember I had some Mexican homies, a couple black homies, and down in San Diego, they don't trip like blacks and Mexicans as much as they do in Los Angeles, right? So I had some homies from Culver City, and we drove down to San Diego. So we down there like on the beach or like a boardwalk. And I remember this fucking black woman. She was like a light skin. She might have been like mixed, like, but she was probably mixed. She rollerbladed past us in a string bikini, a red string bikini. So me and my homies, we all looked like, what the fuck? They never even budged. Like it was just something that's just every day. And I remember I told myself, I said, bro, she could never do that in Philadelphia. She had on string with cheeks everywhere, but just rollerbladed right by us like it was nothing. He was like, man, this is every day out here. And I was like, man, on the West Coast and the South, their freaky shit was way different than up north. Whole different ball game. I was like, man, you would never see nothing like that in Chicago. Just a woman in summertime just rollerblade with a string bikini on, right by you.
No, they would do it. Well, not because they would go to the to Lake Michigan.
Okay, we was in San Diego. I mean, but the homies that was from there, they didn't even look at her. They was like, oh, that's every day. That's nothing out here.
That's what I had. That's the one thing I forgot to talk about. A lot of y'all don't know that in the 90s, in the 2000s, you talking about 2 Live Crew, but a lot of y'all forgot about when football was really popping. When Must Be the Money came out. when the football players were having parties. When the Cowboys was in the White House, not the White House, but they White House. Y'all didn't know about when the first round draft picks would get $50 million out the gate, in the early 2000s. Y'all didn't know about how A lot of the reason why you got the stripper culture now, because a lot of the strippers will live at the baller's house, and it'll be like 3, 4, 5 strippers in the house, basically on duty Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then they'll go strip in the club on Saturday and Sunday. A lot of y'all.
Bro, this is why I said a lot of y'all about 30 and younger is the reason why you don't know who your dad is, or you at odds with your pop because he come around every now and then. He don't know if you his son, because that era, that era was something different, bro. Because that era right there, for that time, black men, as fucked up as it was, black men had that time to make money and express themselves in a manner in which they felt like they could compete with a white man. Like they had that kind of money where they can go places and buy. That's when they start changing laws. Because remember, we used to go places with trash bags of money and buy a car. Then they put that law in with over $10,000. So like, or you just go buy a house out in Hatboro, PA, a $250,000 house back in 1995 was a lot of money. But that wasn't nothing in the street. So you had black men, the black male's confidence was different. Now, a lot of people died. A lot of people went to jail. I'm just telling you the psyche of that time. You are a black man now, you grew up with nothing, but now you got $500,000 in the house and you own a bunch of storefronts and condos. Your confidence level was different.
And I'm gonna tell y'all something about, the cost of living was a whole lot cheaper. So y'all gotta realize they were girls who were in high school, like 16, 17, who got kicked out the house, and they had an apartment for like $450 a month or $375 a month. They had a little 1-bedroom somewhere. So y'all don't know that some of y'all moms, and even back in the day, if they were doing real bad, they have like 2 girls a roommate together, or somebody will let you stay in a room. And y'all don't realize that, you know, some of y'all were conceived, and some of y'all was just conceived because y'all parents was wild kids, and they figured I work this job because the car. I'm about to do it dirty. If your mama had a Camaro in the 90s, if your daddy had a Mustang in the 90s, and I'm gonna go upward. If you had a twin turbo 270 ZX,
I rock Z28.
That was a Camaro, but the twin turbo was a Toyota with a Nissan. The Nissan 240, the Mitsubishi Eclipse,
Eclipse twin turbo,
3000 GT,
dual overhead cam, baby.
I'm gonna tell y'all what people was doing, you know, because by the 90s, the 80s guys you was talking about with the 190s and the Saabs and the Audis, you know, that died down. And now people, especially in my hoods, they used to do the box Chevys, the Caprice Classics, the Delta 88s, the Grand Nationals, you know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. So y'all don't realize that, like when Lexus came out, you knew somebody was popping when they had a Land Cruiser.
I have a trash bag in my bra.
It was over.
Put all the trash in there.
But see, on the East Coast, we didn't drive them old schools. Like we just went, you know, we had 5.0s, Broncos, 760 Volvos, with the white seats piped in, BBSs, or we just went and bought a Benz. Like we went, like I remember we went down south with all our cars, and I seen the dudes with the Chevys with the Kool-Aid stuff on there. We down there in S600s and Jaguars, and we looking like that shit looks so crazy to me. I was like, why they driving them old ass cars? But then I seen the dude had a Grand National with like the white seats piped in. The joint, I was like, yo, this joint is dope as fuck though. And that joint, and it was fast as hell. Like they had them muscle cars down south, and they would build them though. It's a different. I'm
gonna say this for some of you people who wanna, you don't know behind the scenes. Is somebody said they Trans Am, yeah, Yogi. A lot of guys who were young in the 90s and 2000s that y'all thought was just in the streets, a lot of them guys were fronts for the older people. A lot of them guys took sentences, and the older dudes was really running the game.
They sure was.
So A lot of y'all don't realize the guy you looking up to that wind up catching getting his third strike or caught some football numbers. He was being true and all this, that, and the third. And it was an older guy sitting back, chilling. Because where they got all that swag from was really older guys back in the 70s and 80s driving Maseratis and them and that's how they got the foreign car thing popping in the first place.
Yeah, the OGs had the SLs.
Coogee sweaters and
yeah. Yep. No, I'm gonna
a lot of y'all didn't.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My bad. I'm gonna keep it short. A lot of y'all don't realize who had the dope boy swagger was Bill Cosby on that Cosby Show, because y'all didn't realize how much some of them sweaters cost. But if you was around older guys back then, like, what did you wear with that lame ass? Or they knew what Burberry was back then. It was just a raincoat to you.
They was drinking Cristal back then, the old heads. See, the thing is, what people don't understand, man, that's why the game be. See, all the heroin OGs, the heroin kingpins, the ones that didn't go to jail, they became the crack kingpins, not the younger guys. They got put on by the old heads, or some of the young guys muscled their way in. But the old heads ran the streets, the ones that didn't go to prison. So, I'll just say this, right? Those hair salons that those girls worked at. See, because they try to say that, man, these niggas wasn't shit. Niggas, that's a lie. Let me tell you something, man. Back in the day, it was an honor to give a girl something. Like, if you had your girlfriend, but you might have had your main chick, you might have 2 other girlfriends. Like, back in the day, it wasn't nothing for a man to have 3 girlfriends at the same time. And guess what? He took care of all of them. He'd kill you if you slept with one of them. That's just how it was. Am I wrong, L.A.R?
No,
he'd kill you if you slept with one of them.
And a lot of y'all don't realize the backstory to a lot of these college girls dating dope boys, even in the 90s and 2000s, was
he was
they
paying
sent a
for
lot
it.
of chicks to school.
Yeah, those buildings.
That's why they gravitate to them.
Those buildings, a lot of those dudes, see, this is what happens, right? The reason why when some of these dudes get 50, 60 years, your mom still go see them in prison, because the house you lived in and the properties that you own, he brought that for her. And when he brought that, it was in her name. When he went to prison, he passed it along to her. She might have moved on and got another husband now, but she's beholden to him, because when she didn't have nothing, he was the one that bought that building that she worked in, that salon. So what I'm saying was, back in the day, like the way, like it's how manosphere people talk now, you a simp if you do this. No, you was a bitch ass nigga if you didn't do nothing for your girl back in the day.
Exactly.
Can I do it if y'all don't mind? That's why some of y'all don't like y'all stepdaddies. That's how it changed. Because them bitch ass niggas was taking the money and balling out and fucking it off. That's what happened with some of them cats. Some of them cats hated them dudes, and they hated the fact that they having to raise these kids, and they started saying, see, a lot of people got out, and they were supposed to have stuff, quote unquote, waiting for them, and a lot of people stole from them.
Yeah, right, yeah. He left his girl. See, back in the day, you had a girl, you went and brought that BMW for her. You put a bow around it. And you was like, you called your dad, I just bought my girl this car. Like, see, the world I grew up in, I don't have the money that I had back then. If I did, I would buy my wife anything she want. But for me, I took pleasure in doing something for a woman. Because it didn't mean anything. But if you was a man, you can't do nothing for him. And if you even had money, you wouldn't do nothing for him. But then you expect loyalty from him. The reason why the girls were so loyal to the so-called Pookies and Ray Rays, because a lot of those dudes in the streets took care of their women. So I told y'all, your step-pop had a wife, but he was your daddy too. The house you lived in, he brought that for your mom. All the cars she had, your clothes, your mom was his wife too. I didn't say it was morally right, but this was the world. And guess what? Your mama and his wife knew each other too.
Yep. That's the crazy part about it is this old chick. I was working at a job, and I was hollering at her and stuff. And so, we just chopping it up, talking and stuff. Because the funny part was she was selling lingerie, and so she was telling the little young girls in there. She like, I got these little see-through lingeries and stuff like that. You want to dress up for your man? And the young girls were like, nah, we don't dress like that. She was like, I'm telling you. She's like, it worked. You know what I'm saying? Get on them. So me and her, we got to chopping it up. She was like, yeah. She said all these little young girls back in the day when the dudes was selling work and everything. She said, I had me a little sugar daddy taking care of me and everything. He said, what you want? You want a car? You want some clothes? She like,
House.
nah. She said, I need some stability. Give me a house.
And he
He was
bought
like,
it.
oh, you ain't said nothing but a word. Boom. Put the down payment on there and was making the payments. She said, dude paid for that house for 20 years to the point where he was like, you know what I'm saying? Money getting a little funny. I gotta save for me. And the old lady. And so she said, I ain't mad at you. She went on and capped them 10 years and paid it off, and she was good. She was like, man, all the young girls, they were going out there in the street trying to get them boys to buy them clothes and try to look good. She said, dude bought me a house, damn near paid the mug off, paid it for 20 years. She
We
said
was all
everything,
connected back
didn't
then.
have to worry about none of that stuff. And then, like what y'all talking about too, it's funny because this the reverse. A lot of times why dudes didn't like their stepdaddy, because your stepdaddy was trying to build you into a man, but you want to still be that little boy like your daddy. Your daddy was the little boy, and you want to be the same little boy like your daddy. Nah, I ain't taking jump from him. Nah, daddy, he don't run this over here. It's me and you. Your daddy ain't doing nothing for you. He ain't giving you no shoes. Every time your daddy say, I'm coming to the basketball game, he ain't there. Stepdaddy like, man, go out there and give him head. He out there playing ball with you. See, it's the reverse side, because sometimes it do be that point where your dad was there, and then y'all had that little beef, but then it's the other side where old bomb ass dude, he done skeeted off in and done took off, and now he want to come back and beat his chest like, hey, that's my little man.
And swept mom off her feet and said,
Yep.
don't worry about that nigga. I got y'all. Come on.
Yep.
Back then. She came,
Yep.
she had 2 kids, and stepdad said, don't worry about I got y'all. Come on. And then the dad, now he want to come back around. I just want to see my kids. Nigga, we ain't seen you in 3 years. She live in the suburbs. She got her own. Like, he put her through school. He paid off her debt. And see, what I'm saying is, see, because I know we got the manosphere talking points there. We got a different world. It's a different breed of girls. What I'm saying is, don't compare 30 years ago to now. It's a different time back then. And you didn't have so many independent women like you got today. Back in the day, you wanted to make money so you could save your mama and your girlfriend. I made this money for them. You understand what I'm saying, L.A.R.?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about like making a topic this way, because a lot of people, they live vicariously in the crack era through TV and music. So a lot of people's moral compass, people don't realize the morality changed in the Black community from the crack era to now. So some of the things that y'all think is cool was never really cool. Even with the street dudes, it wasn't cool. So now we're at a point where it's like, oh, that get the bad culture, that was not cool. That I'm a killer, I'm gonna just go where and just start fights everywhere I go, was not cool. That getting drunk and high in public where everybody can see you, that was not cool, because you was gonna make the block hot and get people arrested. Was not cool. So a lot of things that the just blowing money was a part of the culture, but you kept it in certain places. You didn't make that a public thing like that. You had to be in certain spots to see that. You didn't just go out and blow money like that to be seen like that. There was a part of anonymity back in the day where somebody got to tell you. See, nowadays, you know who such and such is. Back in the day, they had to tell you, oh, that's such and such. You didn't know what they looked like until somebody showed you. It was a
if you was somebody back in the day, they called you by your whole name. Oh, that's the boy Richard. That's Richard Spikes right there, man. Oh, for real? Yeah. Watch out, man. He coming through, man. Like when you was somebody, they called you by your first and last name.
and some of y'all don't want to hear this, and I hate that I gotta tell y'all this. Some of your family members that you thought was the shit, they was the bitch made people, the rats and the snitches. And you grew up thinking that they was something that they wasn't. And you didn't know this because nobody told you. So you never thought about it when you was in school. My family is da 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 da. And you got other people like, who? All right, I'm gonna see him when he get out. See, a lot of y'all don't like. One of the reasons I did this because I saw a Tekashi 6ix9ine clip and I read the comments. Y'all thought you could jump off the porch and turn snitch. This is how bad we got. You couldn't jump off the porch and turn snitch and people be sympathetic to you. That is not how it went. You know, oh, they kidnapped my girl. Bruh, you put these people's life in jeopardy. You knew what was gonna happen after that. Now we playing this game where I don't know what's going on. Some of y'all, I'm gonna backtrack and I'm gonna make it lighthearted. Let me explain something to y'all. Some of y'all like the benefits of how it was back in the day. If you got free haircuts at the barbershop, it was for a reason. If you got, if you wasn't a poor kid that they didn't feel sorry for, if you was a taking care of kid and you got free haircuts, it was for a reason. If you was one of them kids who would go to the store and they give you extra stuff and you wasn't the poor kid, it was for a reason. So if you a little girl and you got your hair done at the beauty salon, it was for a reason. For free. Some of y'all built y'all whole lifestyle not realizing y'all was by proxy living off of people, reputation, and y'all grew up thinking it was all good. And y'all didn't actually, then y'all went into the world and got a little too damn wild and reckless because you thought everybody was catering to you. They wasn't catering to you, they was catering to who was connected to you. Some of y'all went to college doing that. And I hate and the reason why I say that is to say this. I know it got bad when some of y'all went to college and y'all knew and y'all would lie to y'all family and ask them for money, but be in the streets with half of the money they sent you. Y'all thought y'all was slick. They sent you to school to get an education, but you decided to be Tyreek. That's how that ghost story came up. Because there's a lot of cats pulling that stunt. Oh, I need $500. They taking $250 and trying to buy a little small pack to sell, to flip, while they screwing over their college money. There's a lot of cats who went to college and ruined that opportunity because they wanted to be street dudes at the end of the day. And that's not what you were sent to school for.
You know what's funny, L.A.R? And I experienced this, and a lot of people don't know. A lot of street dudes, by the time they got immersed in the street making the big money, they had best friends that was in college. The college boy wanted their life. They wanted the college boy's life. College boy, because he had the hot car, the chicks with the short skirts, with the big jiggling booties, and I had they wanted all of that. And I'm looking at my best friend Kevin like, man, I want this. And I had to tell him, I said, bro, you don't want this shit. You see the good part that come with it. You don't see the flip side of it. But I wish I could have your life. I wish I would have listened to my dad and went to school. Like, all of this look good, but it's
because what happened is people flip-flop live. Because if you go to college, you'll be in your whip. He'll be in the dorm room. But you'll go to the dorm and be like, all these girls, all this stuff. It looked like opportunity. He don't see it as opportunity because you got the bread. You see it as opportunity because you're like, dude, you know what you could do with this? Like, you could be a doctor. You could be a lawyer. That's clean money. Because people don't realize, even street cats, and this is where the stupidity happened. What's up, BMT? This is where the stupidity happened. A lot of street cats, if you was really in the streets, the old dudes would tell you to get you a lawyer. The old dudes would tell you how your money for a bail bondsman. The old dudes would tell you, hey, put money to the side to do X, Y, Z. So they used to deal with lawyers, doctors, dentists, because they was paying in cash when things was happening. So guess what? They knew those guys had money because they was using their money too.
Well, you got to remember, L.A.R. See, the thing is, the 70s heroin dealer, first of all, they was richer than the 80s drug dealers. Let's put it in perspective. The 70s heroin dealers were richer. Now, you made money faster with crack because you didn't have to have heroin mills where you had to do all that, breaking it down, and crack was just ready rock. You cook it up, bag it up. It was a little different. It was faster. But the heroin drug dealer was richer. It was the 70s. You didn't have as many laws set in place. They had people that knew how to wash the money. They take money down to them Jews. They wash and clean up your money, make it legal. They had more structure set in place as opposed to when you come into the 80s and the 90s and the fast to just blowing money fast drug dealers. By that time, they had laws set in place where the game was already rigged. But the thing is, I forgot. I forgot. Lost my.
There was in the 90s they had less functioning addicts. In the 70s and 80s they had a bunch of functioning addicts. Crack made people non-functional.
It did, yeah, because my uncle told me my uncle was a 70s heroin kingpin. And he told me, he said he knew a lady that did heroin for 20 years every day. Crack came out 6 months, she lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
6 months.
That was the same thing with the dust too. When they used to be snouting, people in my family, man, the dudes would snout, take care of business, do what they needed to do, and they was functioning. They hit them a little bump, and then they'll go on about their business, you know. But when that crack hit, it was different. People getting kicked out, you know, families. Like I say now, man, the whole biggest thing with the black community, it's a whole I mentality. Everybody's out for self. Back in the day when your uncle did something, you know, he fell on hard times, he knew he can come back and stay with his moms. He knew he can come, you know, to an auntie or a sister house. Nowadays, oh, nah, you ain't staying with me. Hey, go live in a shelter. When I be hearing women talking about how, she abused and she ain't got nowhere to go. Also, she don't got family, so she can't go back to her family. See, the pride is a lot of people downfall, and that self mentality is hurting them too. But a lot of people get hurt by pride, you know.
See, a lot of people don't want to say one of the biggest issues. They keep saying that the men abandoned them. What happened was them old school men died first, because that was a person didn't nobody want to see. Even if you was in the streets, you did not want to see your daddy who grew up in Jim Crow. You didn't want to see him, because if he got to come by and you go, your baby was doing what? See, y'all don't know the fear of I'm gonna tell your daddy. There are people who are dead now who know the fear of my uncle, my granddad was in the Korean War. My uncle was a Parliament and Funkadelic fan. So anybody know about that? You know, they were drug heavy. You know, psychedelics, weed, that type of stuff. You know who my uncle didn't want to see? His daddy, my grandpa, because the minute he heard you doing what? Running track. Like, this nigga is not finna heal, he not finna kill me. When those guys died, it gave some of y'all a pass to go, because y'all didn't have that guy to answer to. That's why a lot of y'all ran from y'all uncles. A lot of people don't want to say that. When your granddad died or your dad died, you ran from your uncle. Because you know your uncle was going.
I was scared. Listen, I probably wouldn't have never sold drugs if my uncle didn't die in 1990. I wasn't scared of my dad. I was scared to death of my dad's brother, my uncle. I was scared to death of him. I was with him every day. He took me everywhere. He was the old 70s gangbanger when Philly had the gangs back then. But you gotta look at it like, I think that we make the mistake because see, if you look at New York City from 1970 to 1980, New York City has some of the highest murder rates then. Look at Chicago in the 70s, 1974, 970 homicides, right? Cabrini Green, Robert Taylor Holmes, right? This is what I'm alluding to. Philadelphia, 1974, 525 homicides, right? There was no rap music back then. There was no drill. What it was the heroin era. The heroin era was the precursor to the crack era. The crack era came in right after 85, but if you look at the early heroin era, and that was our dads in them generation. Our dads, they was the ones that was fucking you up. Grandpa and them, you ain't play with them. Our dads in them era, some of our dads went to work, but our dads' brothers in them was the heroin kingpins, and there was a lot of killings in the 70s. What happens is, because real quick, L.A.R. watch this, because we see the 80s. We don't know where the 80s kids got that shit from. They got it from the fucking 70s. Look at the 70s murder rates. They was the highest they had ever been up into the 90s.
I just gotta add, a lot of y'all don't realize part of that murder rate was the police.
That too. Oh, of course.
Because they just snatch you up and, hey, somebody black did it.
They were taking down drug dealers too.
Yeah. So a lot of that y'all don't realize, and the reason, okay, let me back up. The reason why, so some of y'all don't realize that you're emulating a street culture that got perverted. truth be told, if you was a gangbanger and you was grown and you was 18, 19, 20, you was old back in the day.
Yeah.
You gotta, it was no, once you graduated high school, you weren't supposed to be a gangbanger no more.
Yep.
You're supposed to do something, work in a factory, go to the military.
And get married.
Yeah. Now gangbangers in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and you don't realize, bro. That wasn't the culture. It was something completely different.
At 25, you was an OG. Because
right.
Most of the gangbangers, man, they didn't even live past 18. That was the prominent age. My brother, when he was banging, he got started at 12 years old. He was like, I want to go run the street. Mom was like, nope. He was like, well, I'm gone. And she was like, do what you're going to do. But at the same time, if you in this house, you're going to respect me. When my dad passed off, he was just full of it. My uncle tried to come out there and control him. And, he still had to come back to the A. So he was like, I'm going to listen to you now. But when you leave, I'm back on the track. And he just decided to go, bro. He left and didn't come back.
This is why, Patrick, no 50 Cent. I'm going to tell you what was interesting about 50 Cent when he came out. Biggest thing on smoking. When you listen to gangster rap, 50 Cent's life story was damn near the antithesis of all the other gangster rappers. Because he was actually born in a family that was doing gangster shit. A lot of the people that y'all was listening, that was like the first time you actually seen somebody who came from a family that was dealing drugs and the parent got killed. And that was really y'all first time coming across that. And it was like 2004 or something. A lot of the other people that you consider gangsters, they either came from a good family that was in a bad neighborhood.
They told hood stories.
Right. They weren't actually the kids involved.
Right. Ice Cube wasn't a gangster at all.
Right.
Good school.
Dre wasn't a gangster.
Not at all. He had a brother that was. He had a brother that was a gangbanger. MC Ran and Eazy-E was the only ones that was really in gangs. The other ones wasn't. It was Ran and Easy. The other ones.
But y'all don't know.
Yeah,
the hardest dude.
Yeah,
one of the hardest people in the 80s was Eric B.
He was with the Wolfpack. He ran with the Wolfpack. Ice Cube been with his same woman for 30 years. They told hood stories. They gave Snoop Dogg been with the same woman for almost 30 years. While they told you the gin and juice it up and bang this chick and that, they was married. Married.
That's like Jay Prince. When Jay Prince said he had came out with the Ghetto Boys, he said, man, he had some boys before them. And, they didn't fit the profile of the hood mentality. So he needed some guys to tell his story and tell it from the street form. And that's when he got Scarface, Willie D. They was banging hard with another guy. And then the other guy didn't work out because they said he wasn't believable. And Bushwick came along because, he was just a little dancing and stuff. But at the same time, you had this little midget dude coming at you all strong. Hey, they took it serious. And that's how it was, man. The Ghetto Boys, they told a story from, say hearsay or not, of Jay Prince. Jay Prince said when he did them rides, he knew he might not have came back. And them boys they jumped on stage and they did it, man. See, a lot of boys.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying a lot of dudes, man. That's like a lot of guys, they be talking junk about these artists and stuff like that. Hell, I went to school with certain artists that signed with So, hell, like Future. I went to school with him. Future, man, come from a nice family, but at the same time, their family was also about that life and he was out there with them. But only thing was, his dad did not play. His dad was in his life. But, the family separated, but his dad was in his life. But when your dad ain't always around, hey, you go out there and do it. You do what you want to in the street. That was always the move,
Most dope boys back in the day they funded the rap game. See, the rap game was funded by drug dealers.
Yep.
Drug dealers, black drug dealers and Jewish drug dealers. Jewish gangsters. That's what funded the rap game. Gangster shit.
Big Meech was a perfect example.
Was dope boys. So most of them didn't rap. Most of the rappers was telling story. They looked out the window and they was good storytellers. They was telling stories about the homeboy that had the 100 keys. That's why when you hear these rappers, man, I got back, especially the 90s, I got 100 bricks that pull up. No, nigga, you telling Leroy's story. Your cousin Leroy was the one that got locked up in the truck with, in Texas with 100 keys.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was not you. You know how they was back in the day. Man, I got 1.5 million in the basement. No. It was your auntie Clarice that had Mr. Mark's 1.5 million in the basement while he was locked up. You know what I mean? So they were selling hood stories. They still do it now. Today with social media, they opened it. They did. You know what's funny? I'll say this. They kind of did today what they did to us in the 90s. In the 80s, they gave them the dope, they gave them the drugs, and it was still kind of closed off. Once they locked up all the OGs, they opened it up and let a bunch of kids make a bunch of money. They opened the game up, and you had a bunch of kids, 16, 17 now, making the New Jack Hustler. They making millions of dollars, right? We was young and reckless and wild. And look at the date, look at the time today. The record labels is no more. They got streaming, so now they opened it up and they got a bunch of young kids with no artist development, nothing. They letting them make all of this money, and now they young and reckless. They wild. You got kids that can make a rap song from their living room, put it on whatever they make and make $1 million, and he don't have no type of development. That's the same thing they did to us in the 90s. It's the same shit playing. That's why the murder rate is so high again.
I gotta do it, bro. In the 90s to the early 2000s, if you was a gangster rapper and they found out you was from the suburbs, everybody like X'd you out. No, because people don't even know about Boss. People don't even know that story. You know what I'm saying? A lot of y'all don't realize that Trick Daddy was a 2 Live Crew dancing. Y'all don't know that story.
Damn, I ain't know that one. Trick Daddy's 1996 album was the truth too. You gotta hold on.
But you remember Scar? Was Luke Scar?
Yeah.
Trick Daddy. When the dude's dancing, that's Trick Daddy.
Oh shit.
Just like Tupac was a dancer. You know what I'm saying?
Humpty did.
Yeah, for Digital Underground. Like a lot of y'all.
They were from New York, originally from Queens.
Digital Underground?
He from
I had
Queens.
no idea. I thought they was off Mobile.
Yeah, yep.
So it's just like a lot of people don't realize a lot of the things we was looking up to wasn't real. And a lot of us didn't take that into consideration. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're living a non-real life, emulating something that this is black culture, not real.
But just look at it, L.A.R., but look at it from this perspective, L.A.R. The 80s, the OGs is running the hoods and the blocks. They locked all of those guys up. 1991 come in, New Jack City come out, New Jack Hustlers, a new wave of drug dealer come out. They gave it to you in The Wire when you had.
Hold on. You ain't talking about Tupac. You talking about Prodigy.
Yeah.
That's who had the balance. This is what I mean. Like a lot of people don't realize, you see how it's evolved. People don't really know who was talking about who.
Right. But just think about it though. Just think about it. You got the 80s, and all of them went to jail. New Jack City came out, right? So now New Jack City is the new Scarface for the new drug dealer. New Jack City, right? We watching Nino Brown, and remember they gave it to you in The Wire. Remember Stringer Bell and Avon? When Avon went to jail, Marlo came. He was the new Jack Hustler. Wait, murderous, vicious. He want to kill off all the OGs. You can't work with him. Watch this, right? I'm gonna make this point. So you see the 80s, they got a council roundtable where they all work together, right? They don't get along, but for business they work together. Marlo is the new guy. Unfiltered, you can't do nothing with him, right? Look at today. The record labels is gone. These young gangbangers now is rapping, and they have no guidance or protection over them. And they just social media, they putting everything on online, a bang, bang, shoot. They being incentivized with money to do it. It's the same thing that happened to us in the 90s is happening to our sons today. They gave them everything. What they did was they locked up all the ODs and gave us the streets with no wisdom. With this, they shut down the music industry and just gave these kids everything with no wisdom and social media. So now everything is for clicks. I got my guns, I got my bitches and my hoes, and you pay me for it. And we go to war in every city we go to. So now I'm the #1 rapper in the world, but every rapper trying to kill, but every city I go to, somebody trying to kill me.
Let me do it for a second. A lot of y'all don't realize the streets help gentrification immensely. So a lot of, you know, when people were buying brownstones in New York for $1 because the neighborhood was already destroyed from the crack era, y'all didn't realize people didn't even want to buy them brownstones for $1. Now them brownstones worth $1 million.
3, 4, 5 million in New York and Chicago.
Yeah. And every neighborhood, y'all, when they locked those guys up, it was about, people don't realize how much of a money hustle is. So now when you thinking, you know, we knew the neighborhood changed when you could just throw trash on the ground. When you could just throw a bottle and break it on the ground. See, there was a time you do that, somebody smacking you upside your head.
Yep.
So it changed, and now you don't realize, you know, man, now you want to move to a different neighborhood. But now you can't afford to be in the neighborhood. That's how all the athletes started getting picked off and going to these other schools and the Catholic schools and the private schools and moving the family from this place to that place. So because they can get out of the area. That's how some of y'all don't realize how what wound up happening at the end of the day is, you know why you can't afford to live there no more? Because the streets got so hot that you can't afford the rent, but nobody else wants to buy the property. So the minute people go, okay, we done with this, we can tear all this joint down. You gotta move.
Well, they knocked down the Cabrini Green projects, the Robert Tellers. They start building. They start making $300,000-$400,000 condos. They took Richard Island projects in Philly. You go around there now, down the street is $300,000 condos. You see white women walking their dogs 2 o'clock in the morning. You would have never in the 90s went down 10th and Poplar and seen a white person nowhere.
Look, to this day, ask a person who was born in at least the 80s in New Orleans. It's like, they walk by, that's the Magnolia? Magnolia, some luxury apartments now. You know, so a lot of cats don't realize, you know, things change so drastically. It's the money, the lack of the destroying everything destroyed everything. And I gotta say it, and this is, I hate to do it, but I gotta do it. A lot of the dope boys from the 90s to mid 90s to the 2000s now, y'all don't want to say that y'all coons, because see, a lot of y'all don't want to cross that imaginary white line and bring that over there. Y'all kept the violence in that neighborhood, but y'all was the same ones who was hard everywhere in the hood. But the minute you went to, that's them white folks. I ain't going over there, that's them Hispanics, they don't play. I ain't going over there, that's them Asians. And guess what? That's how you got the corner store. That's how the Asian and the Arab dude can be at the corner store, because you ain't gonna bother him. And some of y'all was working for him. Y'all don't want, you know. Yeah. So it's bad.
It was a culmination of a bunch of things, but they learned from the 70s. What the system did was flood, because remember, in every inner city, especially up north where blacks live, if you notice Chicago, Philadelphia, each one of those areas is about 1 mile or 2 miles from the center city area. Mm-hmm. Whether you in Chicago, Cleveland, Philadelphia. So now the hoods is in close proximity to center city. So that's where the highest real estate is. So make those be the most crack-ridden areas and make the property value plummet. So then, and don't put no resources there. So now those brownstones is worth millions. Whites start moving back in. But that was something that they did to us on purpose, and we didn't have the knowledge. But I'm gonna tell you what happened on the East Coast. A lot of the big time drug dealers on the East Coast didn't start getting indicted until they start buying properties. It was brothers that was starting to buy 50, 60, 70, 80, because those properties were so cheap. You had dope boys that was buying properties everywhere. The feds in the city was getting them indicted because now they see what happens is this, y'all. I'll say this before I go. The drug market is one thing. That's the street market, but there's another market going on. Remember, capital system is a marketplace. When you start making money as a black man and you want to buy into the market, you're buying into a market that's already ran by certain people. So now you got to get grandfathered in. You can't just come in on the block and just think you're going to own 40 properties on this block where the white Russian Jews and the Asians own it all. Nigga, you can live here. You can sell dope on it. We got it insured. But now here come me and L.A.R. We done made $4 or $5 million selling dope. Hey, L.A.R., we're going to take $1 million a piece. We're going to buy up a bunch of property. Oh, you know what? They're going to go down to the city council because remember, I want y'all to remember this. Those immigrants' lifestyle is predicated on your dysfunction. The minute you wake up, me and L.A.R. wake up and start buying the hood back, we don't buy from them no more. We take away their American dream and way of life. That's what they got to do. They got to get you the fuck out of here. So next thing you know, the feds come knock on your door from a homicide from 6 years ago. Guess who put that on you? The business owners of that community that you were trying to buy into. Because when you go down into them auctions, it's only probably me, L.A.R., and 2 other black dudes. The rest of them is white Russians, Jews. They own the whole community, right? And Arabs. They not letting you in because their way of life is remember, the white people wouldn't let them into their communities. So they let them buy up our communities and become the millionaires. Now we start to wake up. Man, you know what, man? I'm tired of selling this dope. L.A.R. on the west side, I'm on the south side. We've been enemies for a long time. We start waking up. Do I come home? Hey, bro, we need to stop killing each other. Let's put our money together and co-op and buy a bunch of properties. Next thing you know, we get hit with a RICO. That's what they was doing. That's why they start locking y'all dads up. A lot of y'all dads got RICO charges because they start buying fucking real estate and properties, man.
See, a lot of people, I'm gonna say this, and it's easy. For everybody who's from New Orleans, what's the worst area now is the East. The East used to be where all the middle class folks was. East Orleans. So now, when they tore down all the projects, everybody go to the East after Katrina. Now, the East is where everybody getting shot up. This is where your grandparents used to stay, your uncle that worked at the docks used to stay, where the guys that was doing all the trades, used to stay. The people that was working in the hotels and making good money in the hotels used to stay. Now, it's the same thing they did in Chicago that he was talking about, the same thing they did in Philly. Now, you in the East. And now, it's one Walmart in the city of New Orleans, but if you go across the lake, it looks like a whole new city because that's where all the upper class people stay. And it's completely walled off. So you think Drew Brees don't live around the black folks like that. The Saints players don't live there. You got to
remember, y'all see, let me tell y'all something, man. Y'all like the sensationalism of the dope boy, the rapper. Y'all don't understand that this is a marketplace, right where you live at, right? You know how they say Africa's got all the resources and diamond and cobalt? Where you live at in East St. Louis, South Side, West Side of Chicago, 3rd, 5th wards, Texas and Louisiana and Philly, where you live at in these urban areas are gold mines. But they never told you. They told you, they trained you to be a fuck boy and make babies all over the place, but never taught you how to make a house. See, you don't have a problem. Let me tell you something, black man. You got an 8th degree black belt in fucking. You can out fuck anybody. You out fuck people so good that the #1 porn thing is a cuckold, the BBC, a black man fucking a white woman while a white man watches. Because you are a guru when it comes to fucking. But you a fuck, black man, make a baby, but don't even know how to buy a house. Don't even know how to pay your own taxes. So you got a black belt of slinging ding-a-ling, but the goddamn 4 or 5 foot Jew with a 4-inch penis will come in and show you how to buy a house, or he'll rent you a home. So he don't give a damn about your sexual problems, as long as he own and can monetize you. The problem is you live, what you call a war zone is prime, multi-trillion-dollar industry. And I'm telling you, the problem was when I first came in to talk to the manosphere, I would tell brothers, get some insurance and buy up. If you are a 6-figure earner, buy up the fucking community you come from. Stop letting these fucking Russians buy it. You own it. But they ain't gonna do nothing but tear it up. So what? You got insurance. They're gonna tear it up the first 10 years. But the more of us buy it, we gentrify our own communities. Y'all didn't fucking listen to me. They locked up a lot of brothers that did it in the 80s. Because listen, brothers in the 80s was buying properties in real estate too. They show that to you in Snowfall. They don't give a fuck about you selling the dope. They care about it when you start taking that money to buy back into the real estate that will give you economic and political power. That's why they keep Jeff Fort and what's the name?
He ain't never come back.
He ain't never. What's the name?
Hoover. Larry Hoover.
Hoover been locked up since '74 for a fucking murder. He should have been home. The reason why Hoover can't come home because of the political power that he has, not because of the gangbanging. So some of you dope boys that had the power, when you start buying up these properties, listen to me, y'all. Foreign relations. They allow immigrants, certain groups of immigrants to come into America to make money. They send them in the black community. When the black people start waking up, you're fucking up foreign relations and you're fucking up the immigrants' American dream. They got to get you the fuck out of here. They didn't give you dope money for you to take it and make it legal. Only other groups can do that, not the African American male.
Exactly. You know, and y'all don't, and taking Chicago, y'all don't understand how the hell is the cartel running Chicago? And the cartel's from Mexico. And Chicago is all the way in the top part of America. How you get from Mexico to Lake Michigan? And it's cool. You know, people don't realize you got to be involved with the government. Because if we do that, everybody getting locked up. So it's like, you know, don't go down this and think everything's cool. You know, oh, we got it like that. No, you don't. If anybody ever watch, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna chill out and we can close it up.
Yeah.
Watch Fargo, the one with Chris Rock.
Yep.
And there's a scene in there, I forget if it's the 4th or 5th episode, where an Italian guy gets Chris Rock's, most of his crew locked up. And the police let him walk into the police station, and he walks into the cell and he said, listen, everybody else in America could be the bad guy. Everybody else in America could be the criminal, make money, but not you.
Yes.
Not you. And he walked his mafia butt right out of the jail with the police and was like, have a good day.
Yep. And remember, I say this because a lot of people talk about the dope boys. Let me tell you working class people something. Especially you brothers and sisters that became 6-figure earners. Our grandparents fought the civil rights movement, and our parents went to work at shipyards, refineries. They went to work in all different places to put you through college so you can get the education that you can get. Some of y'all are 6-figure earners a day. Y'all come from grandparents that couldn't even read. All right, but they can work. It was your job to buy up Harlem once you got the money. Stop looking at what the dope boys doing. If a goddamn Chinese person can come and go into the gulliest parts of Chicago, he don't have no fear. He'll come and buy up the whole South Side. Why the fuck ain't you doing it? You were supposed to buy up East and West Detroit and put insurance on it and bring in other people and teach them how to do it. We were supposed to see the elders didn't drop the ball. I no longer say that. My grandfather, your grandfather didn't drop the ball. They brought the ball right to where it was supposed to be because we got more college graduates in today's time than we ever did. The problem is y'all didn't take they didn't take their education and use it to fix your own community up. Your grandparents and them fought for you to get it. They got you to where they could get you to. When you got the education, you ran out there with Whitey and then complained when they did something racist to you. Or you mad when your son got a white girlfriend because you moved him out to East Bloomfield and all he got to pick from is white girls. Now you're mad. What you should have did was take your money, start buying up real estate, show Uncle Charlie how to do it, show your homies how to do it, and project over time. We should have been gentrifying our own communities. Our grandparents did their job. We didn't do ours. Now we're being gentrified out, and all we got to tell stories is about the dope boys. Well, the dope boys got put in jail, but a lot of y'all went to school and y'all got the know-how, but you giving all your talents to a corporation that's going to get rid of you and hire his son. That's what happened. That's the black community. The dope boy and the 9-to-5 motherfucker that got the credit, he won't buy nothing. You know why? Because he keep talking about these niggas going to tear it up. Well, guess what? The Russian Jew brought it. Why didn't you?
We're gonna leave it at that, bro. Thank you. You know, And I'm glad you smiling. Tell your son he owe me $10.
And I'm the lead singer of the Temptations. L.A.R. L.A.R. is my backup guy. He don't riff like me. We kicked L.A.R. out the group, but we had a vote. I didn't want him back in, but the guys, they wanted L.A.R. back in. So now we put L.A.R. on. He's on drums now. But I'm the lead singer. Nobody comes to hear you, Otis. They only come to hear George Macon. I'm the lead singer of the Temptations. It's 5 members. It was 4. It's 5 now because L.A.R. is back in the group.
If y'all ever see this picture of a man in a shiny suit singing "Nights Like This, I Wish Raindrops Would Fall," that would be George.
Dang.
But all right, y'all take care. Appreciate it,
Temptations,
George.
baby. All right, man.
Peace.